Good to go.
Can you see?
Just pull the mic out and carry it over to the camera.
Is that mic on, or is it facing the right way, or is that?
Yeah, we're on. You're live.
On. Okay. Anytime, raise, right?
Yep.
Okay. I guess first of all, I'd like to welcome all the Mistawasis Health membership to our annual AGM membership meeting. Today we'll be probably doing a number of presentations. Jason here is our external auditor from Myers & Penny. He'll be presenting the audit from fiscal year 2021. As well, we'll be having a councillor portfolio updates from our councillors, and we'll be going through the annual report. But I'll just make a few opening comments. First of all, I'd like to, commend our membership for assisting and making our TLE vote of success. Right now, we're waiting for a 7-day appeal period. So basically, we have 7 days if there's any concerns that the membership may have on how the outcome of the vote turned out. They have 7 days to appeal. So effective midnight Friday is when the appeal period will lapse. Monday morning, we'll begin the process of identifying all of the necessary paperwork to move the file along to help, put in place the indemnification letters. So once we get those out and then return back from the membership, we'll begin the process of sending out the $2,000 to all members over 18. Over the past 2 years, close to 23 months now, we've been dealing with COVID. Initially, it was COVID-19, and it mutated into the Delta virus, and now today we're faced with the Omicron virus that seems to be doing a lot more damage. But if there's any good things to be said about the Omicron, it sounds like it's not as intense as the other viruses, but still we have to be cautious and maintain vigilance. So we're just acknowledging everybody that had their needles and their booster shots. Thank you everybody for doing that, and those that still have uncertainty, please make an effort to get yourself immunized, because it protects everybody. It protects the vulnerable, like our old people, our young that have immune compromised issues, and just everybody in general. We need you to participate and help our community along to get through this pandemic. As we progress down this path, there's been a number of initiatives over the past number of years that lead us where we are today. And again, we apologize for the inconvenience we have caused. We're supposed to have been having the AGM back in September of last year, but because of a lot of logistical problems, mainly COVID, we just couldn't pull it off. So now we're in a position to deal with it, and hopefully we can present to the membership all the positive things and good things that we've been doing on your behalf over the past number of months. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jason.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. As Chief said, I'm Jason Hernger, your auditor from MNP, based out of the Prince Albert office. So tonight I'll be reviewing the fiscal year-end from April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. So with that, we will dive right in. So tonight I'm going to start off kind of high level, and then we'll drill in a little bit deeper. So we'll start off with kind of the highlights. I'll go over what management's responsibilities are with respect to the audit, chief of council, and then myself as the auditor, what my responsibilities are. And then we'll actually start looking at, the numbers, where we'll look at statement of financial position and the operations and then questions. But as we're going through, you can ask questions as they arise, so we don't have to save them all to the end. So, with that, so as I mentioned, we're covering April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. Our audit opinion, so I'll speak more in depth to each of these points as we go on, but just to highlight here. So we have an unqualified or a clean audit opinion, so that's the best opinion that myself as an auditor can give. And we had an annual surplus this past year of $3.5 million versus the prior year surplus of $5.2 million, so very strong results. The net financial debt position, so I'll explain what that means and what it tells us, but for now, we have an improvement here in our net debt, so 7.9 million versus the 10.2 in 2019. Still ongoing significant capital asset additions, so in total 3.5 million this past year versus the 4.02 million of the prior year. Clicking too fast.
I just finished reading that last part of that last page there.
Sorry about that. So the 3.4 sorry, I'll start over on the asset. So we added 3.5 million versus 4 million in the prior year. And then looking at the revenue side, we had an increase in total revenues year over year of 10%, and I'll explain the changes as we get further into the presentation of what each line item has increased by. And then as well, expenses increased by 23% year over year from from March 2020 to 2021. Our unrestricted operating surplus was 3,116,572 versus the prior year surplus of 4,352,000. So what the operating surplus is just from strictly operations, doesn't include any gains or activities, I guess, related to capital or some of the other internally restricted amounts that we have with respect to investments and savings and reserves. So I will highlight those as we continue on. So with respect to financial statements, management has responsibility over the financial statements. Obviously, this list is not all-encompassing. It's just with respect to the high-level financial. Management has significantly more duties beyond the financial statement prep. So with that, they're responsible for consolidating the financial statements and capturing the performance and results of the nation. They ensure that there's integrity and fairness over the consolidated financial statements. So making sure that what gets reported into the accounting system is reflects actually what happened and is recorded in accordance with the rules that each First Nation must apply. And those rules are what we call public sector accounting standards. So those are the rules that we have in place and that what we follow as auditors and accountants with respect to First Nation financial reporting. The accounting systems and internal controls are also management's responsibility, so ensure that every check gets captured, every deposit to the banks gets captured in the financial statements and is recorded appropriately. And as well, management is really their overarching, I guess, goal here is to ensure that the mandate that is given by Chief and Council is acted upon and followed as best to plan and budget as they can. So now moving on to Chief and Council's responsibilities. So similar to management, there's much more to it than as Chief and Council than just the financial component, but with respect to this piece here, council is to oversee management in their financial reporting, hold them accountable to deliver and follow the mandate. Council approves the financial statements, so each year, well, throughout the audit, we have ongoing communication, and then right at the year end or at the end of the audit cycle, we talk to and present the financial statements with council and management. And then lastly, council approves and appoints the external auditors to report to the members. So again, a thing I'd like to highlight here is, again, these are the community's financial statements. They're not my financial statements. My role here is to present an opinion on the financial statements based on what management has reported. And that's where my responsibility then comes in here to examine the accounting records to determine if they accurately represent all the financial activities of the nation. So with that, we confirm all the revenues that come into the nation. We examine a sampling of invoices, contracts, and for verification of payment. And one thing that's important to note is that as an auditor, I do not look at every single transaction. We do what we call a sampling basis, which is identified on what we deem to be the risk areas, which I will highlight in a few slides here. But yes, just want to make that important distinction that we do not actually look at every single transaction. That would be extremely cost prohibitive. With that, part of what I do then is we provide readers or you, the members, with assurance that the financial statements are free of a material misstatement. So meaning that you can look at these financial statements and rely on what is reported. And then the last piece for me is I express an audit opinion. So once I perform all the audit procedures, evaluate the results, and issue the necessary audit report, I can give my opinion. So one thing to note is the audit report does not provide an opinion on the financial health of the First Nation. It just strictly provides an opinion that the financial statements and transactions as recorded, are they recorded appropriately? And again, we look at it with respect to public sector accounting standards, which is the rule book, if you will, that we must follow with these community financial statements. So next, I'll highlight, there's actually 4 different types of audit reports that I can issue as an auditor. So these go in order of worst to best case. And as I mentioned in the beginning, your community financial statements have a non-qualified opinion, so that's the best opinion that you can receive. Although there are 3 different other ones. So the first one is a standard of opinion. So that is the worst case scenario where an auditor is unable to express an opinion on the financial statements, basically saying you can't rely on them. And again, this is not the case here at Mistawasis, but it doesn't happen very often, but it is a possible type of report that an auditor can issue. Our next one is an adverse audit opinion. So it means something isn't recorded in what we in the accounting world called generally accepted accounting principles. So again, not following the rule book of how to account for certain things. So it means that financial statements are still not presented fairly. An example here would be where a material transaction, so meaning it's a big dollar value, very significant to the financial statements, is not following our public sector accounting standards. So then in that particular case, you issue an adverse opinion. The qualified opinion, so these now do occur a little more regularly, still a positive opinion, and it just means that you can pinpoint in the financial statements a specific line item usually, or a couple line items that aren't in accordance with the rules. So there, an actual real-life example that I've had with other First Nation clients is unable, the housing department usually is, well not usually, but in instances, is unable to provide the support and backup on repairs and maintenance. So if that's that specific line item, usually, so meaning they can't provide the backup for checks that have been issued. So that would be an indication or a position where an auditor would issue a qualified audit opinion. And then lastly, the opinion that is ever since I've been involved out here at Mistawasis, unqualified opinion. So it means the financial statements present fairly, so really no issues or significant concerns identified during the audit that would cause us to say that the financial statements aren't recorded and presented accurately. So here so I see now we have financial statement package in front. So it's the fourth page in is the actual auditor's report. And I'll just read the second paragraph. I won't read it word for word, but in our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the consolidated financial position of the First Nation at March 31st, 2021, and the results of the consolidated operations and cash flows for the year ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. And this report will be dated in September of 2021. So again, that is what your community financial statement report is, audit report, and it's what we refer to as an unqualified audit opinion. I'll just pause there. Any questions on anything that I've covered so far? Okay, not seeing any. So continuing on, as I mentioned, or when I first started, we look at our audit procedures where we say they're a significant audit emphasis, where really we focus our time in conduct of our audit. So we start with the revenue cycle, where we captures all the revenues coming in. Then that really drives how we can deliver programming to the community and members. So then we focus on the expenditures. And then lastly, focus to make sure that transactions are recorded in the appropriate period. So on the government funding side, so what we do as auditors, we send out what we call confirmation letters to the major funders, ask them to say how much did you deposit into Mistawasis bank accounts, and then we agree that to your accounting records to make sure that they tie in and match. And then in particularly with your ISC and health monies, we'll also do procedures to ensure that they are appropriate to and eligible to retain those funds, because there are certain areas where if they don't follow the reporting requirements or designed by the department, some of those funds may have to be returned. So we look at that and make sure that all the funds that should be in the community remain and stay there. With the expenditure side, so again, we look at, we'll talk to the finance staff, some of the department heads, and really we gain an understanding of how the accounting systems work, how they record and perform their duties basically on a day-to-day basis. And then we take that understanding and we'll look at the actual supported backup for your checks. So that will include looking at some of the invoices. If there's contracts in place, we'll look at those as well. And really, again, we're just looking to see, do they match and valid expenses that belong to the nation and are appropriately recorded in accordance with the rules. And once we have that piece in place, lastly, we look at what we call our cutoff procedures. So we look at is any, because obviously at the end of March, this is our year end, but we don't shut down operations and business continues going on. Bills come in after year end, but they really relate to our March 2021 year. So we set up what we call accounts payable, or if it's revenues, accounts receivable. So we make sure that everything is recorded in this particular fiscal year. And then there's obviously transactions that happen in the new year that we make sure again that they're excluded from 20 and 2021 year end. So now we will look at the statement of financial position. So here's the excerpt right out of the audit on page 1. So we have our current assets, and these are really what you use to pay your bills. So we start off with our cash component. So you'll see there's a significant increase of $3.2 million on the cash basis. So we have almost 4.2 million of cash in the bank at the end of March. And again, these are just at March 31st, 2021. Once we get into the April 1st, or even looked at it today, these numbers are all different again. So it's just at that snapshot in time at the fiscal year end. So the major, I guess, increases, as Chief indicated, COVID is very rampant, and with that, it really affected the operations of the nation. And in this case, what has happened is the department, being Indigenous Services Canada and their related arm for Associated Health Branch, provided a lot of additional funding for COVID. Some of that came in near year end, or just throughout the year that wasn't spent right away, resulting in a cash surplus. As well, some of the program delivery couldn't occur as fast and as quick as what we would like to happen. So again, some of that cash is retained. The accounts receivable, so accounts receivable are monies that are owed by outside parties to the nation. So this past year, you have 4.4 million owing from external parties. So the big change here is last year, ISC, right at the end of the year, indicated that they were going to be able to provide funding for the high school construction. So there was a $5.7 million accounts receivable recorded last year. And during this past year, there was 2.6 of it received, so there's still 2.8 remaining, which is part of this 4.4. So really, that's the significant reason for the decrease in the accounts receivable is collection of that prior revenue for the high school construction, which even occurred several years prior to. The restricted cash, so there's $957,000. This solely relates to your capital project manager, so that's IR project management, and they hold these funds to do the various capital projects that are ongoing in the community. So at the end of the year, there was still some road work being done, well upgrades, the subdivision project. So those, there's several different bank accounts that are held, and those funds are available and will be used in the future as the expenses are incurred. So they are specific funds. All of these are provided by ISC or Indigenous Services Canada and have a specific purpose. So that's why we restrict them or show them as separate from sort of the general day-to-day cash that's available, because these funds do have a specific purpose.
Do you have a statement of how much they get for COVID? What did we get COVID right off the bat in 2020?
There was, I believe it was almost, let me check the rates here. It's significant. So on the ISC side, it was almost 2.5 million for COVID, and then health was almost 850,000 new money that came in year over year.
At beginning of 2020?
That would have been from, yes, April 2019, April 2020 to March 21.
So that's like, is that like $3 million?
Pretty close, yeah.
Is that 1 year, or is that altogether since?
That was one fiscal year, and then based on my understanding of talking, there's still new monies that would have came in again in 21, 22. So I don't know the dollar.
The beginning of last year, 2021, how much did we get for that? Another 3 million, or?
Do you know?
No.
I don't know, because I haven't.
That would be available for this year's audit, Dennis, at the end of this fiscal year. So in the fall, when they've done the reconciliation for 21, 22, right? Yeah. So that there's 23, probably 24 months worth of COVID relief that was given to the nation.
Okay, continuing on page 1 there, so portfolio investments, so there's 3.1 million, down slightly from the prior year of 3.2. So 2.9 million of that relates to your investment in HCC, or the Hamilton Construction investment that happened 3 years ago now, I believe. So that, excuse me, so there was, so they're really their preferred shares that Mistawasis holds in this corporation, and they are going to be redeemed over the period of 10 years. So that's why we see the decrease. That's the recognizing of that redemption. And then there's also about 230,000 of GICs for various projects or funds that have been retained or invested when not needed for day-to-day operations. Then you have a small amount of funds held in trust, so that's what we refer to the revenue account that's held by ISC, so there's 1,137 on deposit there. Restricted cash, so there's 706,437. And these funds are to be set aside and are set aside for your replacement reserve and operating reserve funds that are part of the operating agreement you have with CMHC. So a way to look at it is it's a savings plan or a rainy day fund. So when you build a new phase of housing, you are to put a monthly allocation. Ideally, CMHC wants to put it into a GIC or an interest-bearing cash account, build up basically a nest egg. As those units mature and require repairs and maintenance when they get old, then you draw those funds out, and so that's where it comes in to offset the operating costs once the housing units age. So currently, there's 706,000 on deposit for those funds, specifically for your CMHC housing units. So the increase there up from 370 the prior year, that was to help top up or fund those, because there was a shortfall in having the required cash requirement for those reserves. Your investment in nation business entities, so this specifically relates to your investment with Misty Ventures and their partnership. So there's an investment of $1,061,777, and to note, which I believe will be a further, another presentation here later on, is the actual activities, but this past year there was a $233,689 loss in Misty Ventures, so that gets captured in these financial statements as well. $233,659. And I believe, Yvonne, you're presenting on that, or?
No, you're presenting and I'm just answering questions.
Okay, so yeah, there are more specific details of how that arose are coming up later. So. With that, then we have the debt reserve fund. So this relates to your loans with the First Nation Finance Authority. So part of that loan agreement is they take 5% of your loans in total that you have, basically put it into a savings account, and that's held by the Finance Authority until the debt is repaid. So right now there's $1,161,367 set aside for the Finance Authority to, basically it's, should there be default by the nation, it'll cover that principal for 1 year. The advances to related nation entities, so again, this is related to, so several years back, First Nation drew down from the First Nation Finance Authority the loan, and then they loaned it to Misty Ventures Limited Partnership. So the decrease year over year from $2,984,000 from $3.1 million is Misty Ventures' share of the First Nation Finance Authority loan. And the terms of that loan are based on the same terms, interest rate that the finance or the First Nation Finance Authority loan actually carries as well, so Misty Ventures pays their share and is repaying that debt to the nation.
Are they gonna, is somebody gonna be presented on that, Misty Ventures, somebody here for that?
Yes, Stephen will present on that.
Okay.
So the total financial assets.
I have one more question on that. Misty Ventures, they sent Stephen, how come they didn't send Bobby here or anybody? Isn't Bobby the president there?
It's President, CEO, yes, that's on administration side. This is the political side of it, the presentation.
Pardon me, I can't hear you.
This is the political side of it, like as councillor portfolio holders, Stephen has responsibility for presenting the audit. But down the road, I think there is a plan, I can't speak for the board, but I think there is a plan, right, Steve, down the road to possibly engage discussions with the membership.
Yeah, we're having discussions regarding what the next steps are. Again, sensitive issues regarding partnerships. We can talk about all our 100% owned companies and we can disclose all that information, but when you start getting into the partnerships, you need the actual consent of our partners to share their financial information, and reluctantly they don't. But again, the accounting practices that are being used in this case when it comes to Misty Ventures, we're reporting on not-for-profit, but Misty Ventures is for-profit. So it's a little bit of, I don't know if you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, if there's different accounting principles that have to be adhered to. There's different rules and regulations on that.
They basically mirror and match.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no real significant, and then based on the structure of Misty Ventures, there are no differences. There could be, but you don't deal with any of those types of transactions that would differ.
Okay.
Isn't it, like there's some that you can, there's some things you can let us know about, and there's some that you can't, or is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's just protection of the other companies and the other partners that we're in business with. It's just disclosure of information, but we will get more into that when we do the presentation. We'll tell a little bit more on that.
Because what I was getting at was that there's some stuff that some of us want to know about, and we just want to know where some of the money is going and why nobody knows too much about it, and if you're losing money, and if somebody's getting bailed out and all that. That's all I want to know. But I guess you'll present that later on. Okay. Go ahead.
So total financial assets are 18.6 billion versus the 17.5 that we had from 2020. So now we'll look at the liability side. So these are now what Mistawasis owes to others. So with that, we have bank indebtedness of $91,903, and that relates to checks written on a bank account that cause it to go into essentially overdraft if they would have been cashed all at the end of March. The accounts payable and accruals. So the decrease there from the prior year is really on account of having more cash available allowed the nation to pay down some of the bills that they had in place. So, but there's still 1.3 million amounts owing to other outside parties. So that ranges from accrued salaries to your employees. There would be payments to, there would be some to membership. There would be payments to contractors, professionals that work for the nation at the end of the year. Then we have some deferred revenue. And again, this relates to monies that would have been received but are earmarked to be spent in the future. So rather than recording them in the income statement, basically inflating the surplus for the year, excuse me, they can be carried forward, and the majority of them relate to the capital projects that are ongoing. And the positive here with Mistawasis is, when you recall, we looked at your restricted cash for the project management account. There is more than enough there for the deferred revenue to be recognized in the future. The long-term debt, the current portion of the long-term debt, so this is principal payments that will be made in fiscal 21-22 or next year. So there's 1.7 million that will be paid down on your debt. And then the long-term component, which was payable beyond 2022 into the future, there's 22,234,695 of long-term debt, and that it has decreased over the prior year of 22,755,744. And I've got a slide that will break down what all the debt relates to, so just bear with me for a few minutes here. The native claims loan, or for the TLE, so that's a loan by Canada to help with pursuing your claim. So there is 980,149 drawn on that loan, and that's up from 718,149. Once the claim gets settled, that loan will be repaid. So overall, the total financial liabilities are 26,552,502. So that is an improvement over the prior year of 27,728,19. So I guess a good little point here to pause and just ask the question: are we able to pay our bills? So we refer to what we in the accounting world look at what is our working capital. So we look at what current assets does the First Nation own, really how much can we convert it into cash. So ideally you collect your accounts receivable that are owing, that gets converted to cash. You're then in turn able to pay down your liabilities, some of your current loans that you have, and then those accounts payable. Then the difference between the two is what we refer to as your working capital. So ideally you want to have at least one time, two is better, of your working capital in place. So the top line here is your assets. So we've just taken 4 years of information, kind of tracking the trend. The working capital is the middle line there. So you can see over the last 4 years, it's been actually trending up or improving. So that's a positive trend. That's what we would like to see, albeit it's still in a negative position, but it's actually improving year over year. So I think that's all I want to highlight on that. Another metric that we look at on that page 1 or 2, I should say, of the financial statements is we always look at what we call a net asset or a net debt number. So really, if it's a positive number or an asset, just means anything that you own will be converted into cash. If you have your liabilities, anything that you have to pay to others. So obviously that's a little simplified there, but the total financial assets minus your total liabilities will either give you a positive or a negative number. So if it's a positive, it means you have a net financial asset. If it's negative, you have net debt. So why do we care? So if it's positive, we have net financial assets. So really, it's telling us we can spend past revenues into the future. If it's negative, or net debt, so that's what Mistawasis has. So it tells us that we need to secure future revenues to pay for something that we've already bought. So that really, at the end of the day, it says Mistawasis has taken out debt to fund operations, or not operations, sorry, but to build. Really, a lot of it relates to capital or investment. So with that, when we look at some of the loans that you have with respect to your CMHC housing, you already have future revenues secured because you get what we call subsidy from CMHC, which is said or to be used to help with your loan payments. So even though we say you have a net debt position, you still have already secured some of those funds to assist with repaying down some of your debt. So this slide here is just, again, a graphical or line chart of just tracking the trend. So financial liabilities are at the top, middle line is your assets, and then the last line is your net debt. So you can see 4 years ago, net debt position was 11.8 million, where today at the end of March in 2021, we're at 7.9 million. So that's, again, a trend in the right, positive direction where we want to see things improving, ideally year over year. So again, that tells us that the nation hasn't taken out additional debt at the expense of basically the financial results activities of the community. So now, with respect to the debt specifically, we have over 19.9 million is advances relating to the First Nation Finance Authority. So back when a lot of the drawdowns were made, some of it, as we discussed a little earlier, went to Mistawasis in their partnership. There was the investment in Hamilton construction. There was significant capital, houses were built, and the like, and then so really a lot of it was to put into infrastructure, wasn't to finance the day-to-day operations. So one thing I guess I'd like to reiterate or comment on is there's really two types of debt, one to fund your day-to-day operations and then for capital. So usually we'll say there's good debt and bad debt is if you're funding your day-to-day. And in Mistawasis' case, that's not the case. Most of your debt is for your houses. First Nation Finance Authority for some of those projects that we discussed. And then lastly, for almost $1 million for that TLE entitlement claim, which you understand has been ratified, so that debt will be repaid here in the future as well. So with that, we'll look at the investment in your capital assets. So kind of carrying on here with that topic of investing back into the community. Our capital assets are what the buildings we're in today, all the roads and the lands purchased, your housing, vehicles, equipment, computer hardware, software, water and sewer infrastructure, and your ongoing capital projects. So the assets are consumed as they provide service to membership, so that's why we show them as a non-financial asset at the bottom. It's not like we sell our assets to deliver cash surplus to help provide services. The buildings and infrastructure are what is used to deliver that service to you, the membership. So we need to be able to track and monitor and plan for reinvesting back into the community. So you'll see for the last probably 4 or 5 years, there's been significant capital additions and reinvestment back into the community. So there's always projects on the go in a given year. So here is, there's a schedule on page 19 of your audit package there. So we're looking at the net book value, so this is the original cost less what we call the accounting depreciation, or what we expense since the conception of those assets. So a lot of the buildings we amortize over 20-25 years, so rather than just expensing the full capital construction cost in year one, it's broken up over 25 years. So with that, what we refer to as our net book value. So at the end of the period, we have Not sure why those are not showing up.
Projects, it's projects under construction for
Okay,
this one.
thank you. So the first one is projects under construction. I think it was 1.2 million.
It's 2,011,000.
Okay. So it's showing on your screen or not?
Yeah, people online will see it.
Okay. Just bear with me a second here. Sorry, I'm not sure why that isn't showing on the screen. So, looking at that schedule here, so we also have lands that were purchased through the specific claims. So there's $5.2 million of land that has been purchased. Your community buildings, so that includes all the housing, schools, any workshop and main office. So there's $22.2 million of buildings in the community. So that's a significant and large number. So again, as those assets are used and age, have to consider and manage replacement of those assets and infrastructure on an ongoing basis. Because obviously, if you needed to replace everything, so the net book value right now is $49 million. Not possible to just hold off as long as you can and then just replace. So you have to basically chip away at it year over year to keep things in top shape. The community equipment, so that's any of the heavy equipment and vehicles, so there's 1.8 million for that. And then your infrastructure, so water treatment plant, lagoon, those types of activity or things are 17.8, so still another significant asset and investment in the community. And then your assets under construction are 2 million. So that includes, which I will jump to the next, because these are ongoing projects that we have. So the total additions, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have 3.5 million of assets purchased this past year. So at the top, we had some buildings. So there was a COVID-19 unit, and Camp Big Child was 192,292. 5 vehicles, a sewer truck, and then a wing for the grader, total 476,355. The assets under construction, so there's 947,000 of ongoing projects that are still continuing. So there's the drainage project, the school, lagoon, there's a subdivision project, some well upgrades, and a satellite water treatment plant. Through the specific claim trust, there was some more land purchased this past year, so there's 298,510 of land. And then there was ongoing road work, so that's another significant capital project, of 393,101. And then lastly, there's some housing construction, so phases 14 and 15 came on, which I believe were 8 housing units in total. And then some band housing units were also constructed at a cost of 1.2 million. So that's our breakdown of the asset additions this past fiscal year. So now we'll look at, if you jump to page 16, we have our accumulated surplus. So this is a historical record since the beginning of accounting out here at Mistawasis. So really it shows if we use all of our assets, pay off all the liabilities that we have, it's the accounting value of what we would have left, our equity or accumulated surplus. Those are, and then I guess as I kind of alluded to earlier, there's different components within that accumulated surplus number, and so there's some restrictions on that. So here, so at the top, we do have our restrictions with the funds held in trust. So process there is submit a BCR to Canada, then you can access those funds. CMHC, again, requires some reserves to be maintained, so there's $321,000 that is set aside for funding those reserves. The biggest component of the equity relates to your equity and tangible capital assets, so that's the total net book value less any debt related to those assets. So the net value is $35,813,000. A way to look at that is if you sold all those assets at the accounting cost, not what fair market value, because we don't record it at what the actual fair value is, paid off the debt, in theory, that's the amount of cash you get. Obviously, that's not how we would fund operations, by selling our assets, but that's a way to look at what that equity number tells us. Because you have to repay that native land claim loan, 980, that's a negative equity component, so that will be repaid in the future. And then as well, your equity and business investment. So we say this again is internally restricted because it is a separate business entity. There's no, I guess, cash and the like coming into from that investment, so it's on its own out there and doesn't really day-to-day impact activities out at the First Nation. So then we're left with what we refer to as our unrestricted surplus, or really how do we manage and monitor the day-to-day operations of service delivery. So you'll see here that, so the second last line, we have $5,043,000, that's up from prior year of 1.9. So in the beginning we said or mentioned we had a surplus just in total, but when we look at it just on an operating standpoint viewpoint, the current year operating surplus was $3,116,572. So a surplus tells us we have resources that are available to fund future transactions. If you're in a deficit position, which we are not in this case from an operating standpoint, it would otherwise, if we were in a deficit, just means you again have to pay for past transactions that you've incurred. So the operating surplus again is not restricted or to be used for a specific purpose other than your service delivery to your membership. So now we'll look at the statement of operations. So we're looking at page 3 so the excerpt here is just looking at the revenue side. So with that, we start off with your Indigenous Services Canada funding. So the first column here is your budget, so what was anticipated to happen. Middle column is the actual results of the past fiscal year of 2021. And then the last column on the right is your 2020 actual results for that fiscal year. So there was a decrease, so we kind of touched on it earlier, because you might recall last year there was $5.7 million funding provided by ISC for the high school, and so that was a reduction, but then it was offset by increases as we touched on earlier. There was $2.5 million of funding from ISC with respect to COVID, and then there was also some capital funding this past year of $1.2 million that sort of offset the prior year decrease of not having the capital funding for the high school. First Nation and Inuit Health Branch, so there's $1.9 million of funding, so it's a significant jump from the prior year of $636,000. So $850,000 of that is on account of COVID, and then as well there was $371,000 of funding for your Child and Family Services project. So I understand that will be commencing in the next fiscal year. So that is the reason for the big jump on those two line items there. The Canada Morgan Housing Corporation, so this is a subsidy that is received from CMHC to assist with loan payments on the CMHC housing units. So there's $279,000 of funding received. The Saskatoon Tribal Council provides $5.8 billion. So again, increase over 2020 of 4.1 on account of some additional dollars relating to COVID as well. Other revenues, kind of not sort of other sources of besides the federal government. So there's 1.6 million of funds from other sources. Your rental income, so there's majority of this relates to CMHC program collecting rent on housing units, and then as well as land lease revenue on lands that are rented out, so 688,000. First Nation Trust. So here, I guess, is a direct impact from COVID with the casino closure for, I believe it was 3 months in the prior year, resulted in the First Nations allocation from the trust, causing it to decrease to 619 versus 852,000 from years past. Here's a new line item of the deposit interest relief. So with COVID, the First Nation Finance Authority forgave some interest of 511,836. So there was that there, and then the commission of 200,000 is another new line item, and that's with respect to the acquisition of the Hamilton construction. There was a commission fee of 200,000, so that's a one-time payment to the nation that was recorded this past year. SIIT, 189,333, and then Dakota Dunes CDC funding of 132,600. So there was less applications and dollars provided again from the CDC on account of, because that's again directly from casino profits. So overall, the revenues for this past year were $26,932,000, up from 2020 of $24.5 million. So a lot of that increased budget is on account of the additional COVID dollars that we received. On the revenue side, just a line graph. I guess we won't spend too much time because we did explain the changes here. Top line is total revenue. I guess just a point to highlight here is that it's continually been trending up from 17-18. It was 16.5 million, where your revenue budget now is 26.9, almost 27 million. So the nation has grown significantly year-over-year. Now on to the expense side. So now resources, which is usually in the form of cash that's given up to the year to various parties. So the most significant expense to the community is salaries and benefits to employees, repairs and maintenance, travel, tuition, utilities, etc. Which on page 20 is a breakdown of expense by object. And then on page 3, we'll look at in a little bit sort of by major programming area. So we'll look at the total expenses in a couple of different ways. So salaries and benefits, 7.6 million, almost 7.7, up from 6.8. So again, on account of COVID, you're going to see a lot of increases here on the expense side, similar to offset what the increases we would have seen on the revenue side. So salaries were on account of, mostly it was for security and that kind of thing with respect to COVID. Contracted services, a large jump here, and what the result of that one is there was 47 houses that had significant work or renovations done. So that was 3.5 million versus 1.2 previously, and like I say, the increased work and repairs done on the houses is the major factor for that increase. The amortization, so this is an accounting entry only. It doesn't require actual cash. It's, as I mentioned earlier, how we recognize the use of those assets on an annual basis rather than just expenses all in one current year. So 2.2 million of amortization occurred this past fiscal 21. Supplies expense, again, another big increase, was 886,000 in 2020, now 2.1 million in 2021. So that again relates to cleaning that was required with COVID regulations. So that is the majority of the increase there. Program expenses, 1.5 million, a little slight decrease over the prior year, 1.7. Your social assistance is 1.1 million compared to 1,053,000 in the prior year. Your interest on long-term debt, so that's the borrowing costs of the loans that the nation has. So there's 583,000 of expense relating to those loans. Your student support costs are 673,658. Consulting, 510, up from 130. So again, that's includes what they report as fee for service, and again, that's on account of cleaning for increased requirements of COVID. Rent costs, 414,373. Tuition, 381,000. Travel, so quite a big drop. So it was 370,000 this past year compared to 678. Obviously, with restrictions due to COVID, we're unable to travel. The utilities cost, 342,000. Repairs and maintenance costs of 592,000. Insurance on, so that's all the buildings, liability, etc. 363,000 for insurance. Member support, 196,000. Professional fees, 186,000. Equipment lease, 140. Fuel.
For this professional fees, what are those?
The majority of that would be audit and legal lawyer fees. Or sorry, audit fees are separate. So the audit fees are 109. So that professional fees would majority be legal. Sorry. Bank charges. So the monthly fees basically are if there is overdraft on any bank accounts. So that costs 29,480. Some meeting costs of 26,000. Furniture and equipment 20,000. Honorariums 16,950 down from 41,099, and a small amount of professional development and telephone. So 23,451,000 were the expenses, up from 19,080,000 in 2020. So here's basically the same information. I won't read through it again. Just looking at it in a graphical, comparing year over year. So biggest at the bottom there are salaries, contracts. So again, just highlighting that there was significant change, largely on account of the COVID. So then we'll jump back to page 3. So sort of at the middle lower portion, we have again the total expenses here of 23,451. But now we're looking at it by major area. So band support. It costs the community $6.1 million. So again, this is where a lot of the COVID additional dollars would have been spent. So that's why the large increase in band support. Land management activities are 1.2 million of expenses. Education, 5.5. So that's your generally is your largest expense area of the community. Health again is 3.6 million. So another significant expense to the community as well. Your housing costs are around 984,000. Community service and events, 23,000. Social development, so there's 1.6 million spent on social development. Your capital and public works areas, so there's almost 8 million of expense there. And then the Iron Buffalo Center runs out of 442,000. So just another way of looking at the expenses just on an overall project basis. So now we have the schedules of travel and honorarium for, so we're first looking at your elected officials. So that's chief and council, so we have honorarium in total of $390,000, special travel of $150,393, your flat rate travel of $60,000, then some other items of $53,375. So overall total of $653,768. And then two, we just highlight that travel is to reimburse for out-of-pocket expenses, so it's not just purely income to the individuals. They do incur costs on their own. And then, I think this is the last slide here, is now we look at senior unelected officials. So it's looking at management. So we have salaries paid to management of $879,256, travel component paid to management of $25,705, and then excuse me, other expenses of $150,00066. So the total there for management is $1,055,000.
I don't have my reading glasses, I've got to check this out there.
Sorry?
I don't have my reading glasses,
Oh.
so, Huh?
So that is my presentation actually, so you can open it up for any questions that anybody has, if you want to circle back to anything, or we'll do our best to answer.
Gladys, do you guys have any questions before we go into the?
Yeah, I was gonna, ask about the COVID. Is it, are you, like we got money for it in last April, right?
Yeah.
Is it still there? Is there still some there?
According to Jason, for this, is there a surplus to COVID resources, or I don't know how that?
Yes, there
So if there was COVID support dollars, then it will roll over into this year as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's still funds there, right?
Yes, there is. We apply constantly for funds, right?
The reason why I asked was, the community, is in, kind of rough shape for, like, when it comes out to, being a safe place to live. This recently, this year, it's gone a little worse. I don't know why, it's probably because of no more, people aren't getting any support from the government, because last year they got a lot of money to COVID aid. Band members, I guess it was distributed right across the country. It was cut off just recently, so things went up. Like our crime rate is going up here. I was trying to see if there's going to be more money available to hire more security at the borders. I think that would help us be a safer place. Because recently we've had other problems other than just the drugs. If we had more money to hire more peacekeepers or at the borders, I think it would be more safer here throughout the winter, right, for sure. Because I know there's only 2 ways in the winter, but in the summer it's going to be back up. But for now, it's been going. We're a little bit worried about the community, the safety of the community.
You're right.
I'm sure most of the community members would want that support of the Chief Council.
I think on that point, Dennis, I think that's something that we'll seriously look at, because we've been having discussions on how to improve the overall security of the community. You're right, we have not only COVID issues and people that don't really care about COVID, right? They're out there doing this and losing people as a result. They're transmitting that sickness into our vulnerable people. But you're right, the other significant point that has been really plaguing our community is the whole notion of drugs. And, you know, it's crystal meth. That's one of the biggest drugs that's taken a hold of our community. Now they're starting to, experiment with Fentanyl, you know, that's to the point now where if some young, naive little child, you know, is to be part of that process, you know, that individual is not going to last very long, because that little child doesn't have the, you know, the ability, like some of these people that have, you know, addictions, they have their tolerance levels is so high, right? So some young kid that wants to experiment with this thing, it could be a death sentence for that young man. But you're definitely right, Dennis. I think we'll take that under advisement. When we meet with council probably the next couple of days, we'll discuss, you know, the whole notion of border security versus our peacekeeping program. Because you're right, some of the peacekeepers that are out there, Dennis, they have issues. They're not there to really protect the community, right? We see that time and time again. So we'll be doing probably a lot of positive things to turn this around. If it means closing off the borders and doing more due diligence, and we'll take those advice from our membership.
Yeah.
And also, I think with COVID support as well, we're always going to be lobbying for more COVID support dollars. So we average about $200-300 every quarter. I think it was that we try and support our people. It's not just members on reserve. COVID is for all our members right across the board that ask for it, right? And sometimes other jurisdictions, other people live in other provinces, so it's very challenging because other provinces and jurisdictions, they deal with COVID differently, I guess, with respect to not just giving out money, but there's safe places where we can go. There's places where you can get the food that you need, right? But you're right, our people are really challenged. Not only that, we also have a lot of people coming forward now talking about what they refer to as mental health issues. You know, people that have issues, trying to, you know, figure out from a brain standpoint how things are going, right? So as a result, we're seeing, you know, more addictions in our community. We're seeing more abuse, I guess, with respect to relationships. So as a result, you know, COVID isn't done yet. So as a result of that, you know, we're trying our best to work with the St. Louis Health Center staff, and everybody in general in the community has to do their part in order to ensure that we don't spread this to our loved ones, right? So we'll try everything that we can under our power and take your advice, Dennis.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
When are you going to meet on that issue? Soon?
Probably tomorrow morning. Yeah, we're going to be together tomorrow morning to deal with other issues. So have an open and frank discussion on that tomorrow. So if you're interested, you can worry about that. Come and sit in with us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I guess now that we've concluded the audit presentation, we'll probably go right into the presentations by my council on their specific portfolio areas. I apologize, we were working on a annual report. Hopefully it should be, Steve? Okay, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Just going to be putting this on. This is fresh off the press. I know there was a lot of work that needed to be done to put this report together, gathering the reports, the year-end reports from all the directors, from the departments. So I'm going to go put it on the screen here. We're going to be putting it live feed from on our YouTube. It's already set up there. I know Debbie was trying to get a copy, but the format that our communication specialist put it in, she was having difficulty opening it up. But I actually saved it onto the stick here. So if you have time as we're going through the presentation, maybe you can print them off somehow. But we're going to be putting it on the screen here, so it's probably too late to put it up. But I'll go put it on here now.
Isn't that a shit? Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
See you in 4 hours.
You bet.
I go along, and we'll control it?
Yeah, we can control it here.
Are you on the screen? Back there, right?
Yeah, we can do it here now. So I don't know, Chief, if you want to start off with just opening this annual report. It's kind of like the Chief's message, all that stuff. I don't know if we need to get into it, but...
I think you already addressed it.
Yeah, it's all good, Steve.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. For the presentation.
Probably more than likely what we'll be doing is once we have the final copy, we'll be getting some of our staff to deliver these copies to the home. Right, Steve?
Yeah, yeah. That's just one of the things, like we said, we just got the final version done today. I know we're pressed for time, but we put all our stuff that we had from last fiscal year onto this annual report, all the reports that were done by our directors and our departments. So everything's on here, just in a summative form. Again, just goes through at the beginning part of it, table of contents, outlining what our vision is for our community, our mission statement, values, our leadership, our integrity. These are our principles that we had in place from our strategic planning and the direction of Chief and Council of how they're going.
Could you talk into the microphone just so
Okay.
people online?
So we have
the information here. It just outlines some of the stuff that we have on our strategic plan and the direction that Chief and Council are moving towards. We also have the message from Chief Darrell Watson. We also have the council of this fiscal year, but again, what we're reporting on is 2021. So the other councillors that aren't, that we're reporting on for the 2021 is actually the ones that were here before were Smokey or William Badger, Norma Johnstone, and Melvin Watson. So those are the councillors that were a part of the 2021 fiscal year. And this is a snapshot of the current council. We also have a message from our Director of Operations, Mr. Louis Ledoux. We also outlined some of the organizational chart. Again, all this stuff is going to be available online. It's actually being shown right now. And then we also have a shot of our finance department from our director, Sheila Sutherland. Again, there's a lot of things that we've done to make improvements in the community, especially in the area of finance. Again, there's back in 2014, the community was awarded the financial performance certificate, which clearly outlined that our financial standing. We've had good reports and consistent reports, and just like today, when Jason outlined our financial position and how we're moving forward, again, an unqualified audit, all the good things that you want to hear when it comes to reporting to the nation, when it comes to the accountability and transparency that we're trying to outline with the type of work that we're doing. Again, we're the first ones in Saskatchewan to achieve the financial system certification. Again, it's an owner's task that the nation needed to do, but it outlines that we have our systems in place. We have consistent financial reporting, as stated again, with the unqualified audits, but also all the information that's being presented here today is also going to be available online as outlined in our financial administration law. And that's another thing when we talk about accountability and transparency, we have a law that's in place that directs us on how we're supposed to be reporting to the community when it comes to financial affairs. So again, all these things are good for our nation. It shows us and it shows our community members that we're doing the best to our abilities to manage these dollars that we're getting from the government on their behalf. At the same time, there's other areas that we have to account for, and that's the own source revenue. And once we get into own source revenue, again, there's a big difference in between government funding and own source. I believe right now we're roughly 90% to 95% dependent upon the government to operate our nation, whereas the other 5-10% is own source revenue, which allows us to do a little bit more for the community, provide more services, do more renovations, do more things with our kids when it comes to sport, sport, recreation and culture, and also providing some outlet for our elders and community, and to also put forward special initiatives that we see fit for the community members as they advise us when that we need additional supports in the community. So I'm not going to get into the highlights and all the information that's in there. Just going to let everybody read it. It's again going to be available online, and we are going to be printing out the annual report and be delivering it to each home and community here. But all the information that is going to be here is also going to be uploaded and available online, and going to be a part of this live presentation. So the first, I guess the second portfolio, and I also wanted to mention on the finance, we also have which is called the Finance and Audit Committee, or FAC as we call it, and it's a board that's comprised of a professional designation, an accountant. We also have one of our longtime employees, which we feel that he has the ability to help us, guide us in making decisions when it comes to financial decisions. And that's Mr. Roger Daniels. We're still working out the financial part, but we had Catherine Delsgaard from STC as that person. She has a professional designation as a CPA, so that's a designation under accounting that I think everyone wants to achieve. But also, since Catherine has moved on from the Travel Council, we've been talking to the Travel Chief, Mark Arcan, utilize the CFO at the Travel Council. His name is Hollis. I'm not too sure what his last name is. Hollis Fang? Zhang. Okay. Hollis Zhang. As stepping in for that role. Again, he has the designations as what we require, but at the same time, giving us the ability to move these decisions and financial decisions forward. And I also sit on that board as the chair or ex officio because of my background, my financial background, my financial involvement with the nation as CFO, and giving that advice from the council's perspective. So again, the purpose of that committee and that is to oversee the work that our CFO, our Sheila, Director of Finance, does, and also overseeing the work that our Director of Operation, Louis, what Louis does, to make sure that they're putting in the proper budgeting, putting in the proper work plans in order to carry out the specific programs that are within each of the departments. So again, that's some of the work that we've been doing, but how we're doing it is not on a monthly basis. our reporting requirements under the FAL is quarterly. So what we do is we have our financial CFO Sheila prepare the quarterly financial statements for our review to submit to council for their approvals. So again, as we move forward, there's a lot of checks and balances that we're putting in place on behalf of the nation to ensure that we're showing accountability, transparency to our members on how the dollars are being spent.
I have a question for you regarding the lab, the money that's used for travel when they go to meetings. This is from Roger's job there.
Oh, from the set plane?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he took a leave of absence for a while there. How long was that? And he just got back.
I'm not too sure of the history, but I know he was gone for a number of years, but he returned. Again, not 100% sure on the year when he took his leave of absence, but since then when he was back, now that he's back, I believe the trust is operating in a way that it is in compliance to what the trust agreement is laid out.
Well, the question I had was before he left, they had a trip to Vancouver. On that trip, I don't know what their budget is for that trip, for a meeting, but it was quite high. And I asked him for a statement of that. He couldn't provide one for me. This is quite a while back. This is probably about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And then he left, not long after that. He's back now. How can you get a record of that? Can you still get that record?
I believe through our audits. Again, our audits have been posted online for many years. We'll have to maybe double check on the year that you're inquiring about, and you can actually take a look.
It's about over 3 years ago. But on that trip, their expenses were way high. And shouldn't have been that high.
Okay.
For a meeting.
Yeah. Okay, that's something definitely we can look into.
You're speaking highly of Roger, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe some other time we could get him to explain that where that money went.
Okay, yeah, that's something that can easily be explained, especially when you keep written record of it. Again, all our financial information is posted online through our audits. So again, what you won't see online and can't show online is our general ledger, because of privacy issues. It's called HIPAA. It's a provincial and national legislation that you can't be showing all this private information without consent. However, when it comes to the non-official, the elected officials of communities and the senior positions, based on Indian Affairs, they're requiring us to show that information. So again, to show transparency, when you take a look at it, the Indian Affairs, they're asking all this information. However, when we take a look at our band support funding that we get for all these positions, it's nowhere near the amount that they give us to cover off those senior positions in community. That's something that we developed as a nation to know that we need those positions. We need management to oversee our staff, our coordinators, our clerks, because right now the formula that the Indian Affairs uses that we've been arguing over for a number of years now is there's a lot of positions where they only pay up to a clerk level. But when you're operating a multi-million-dollar organization, clerks can't run those types of organizations. They are the people that do the check writing. They're the people who do the coordinating, the organizing, but you need to have management in order to oversee and to make all those operations run smoothly. But those are some of the areas that we're working on to try and improve and actually get the actual funding for those types of positions, because they're a part of our model, and we're still lobbying the government to get those resources back to our community where they belong. Because when you take a look at the department, the Indian Affairs Department, I'll pick on income assistance. Right now, our income assistance probably has anywhere from 400 to 500 clients that are on assistance. I'm just picking a number. But when you take a look at the workload that individual has to make, that's overwhelming. However, we work with it and we do it. We do the job. However, when you take a look at the department and when you take a look at the workloads that their staff have, and they probably have a multitude of 12, I'm just taking a guess, 12 to 20 employees to oversee the income assistance files for the region that we're in. It's nowhere in comparison to the workload that we have in comparison to what they have. So when you talk about decentralization or the devolution of Indian Affairs, of transferring over the responsibility to the band, we're saying bring those dollars with us. We need those dollars too to administrate those programs at the level that you're expecting us to. So there's a lot of work that we're doing to actually try and get that fair and equitable treatment for the type of work that we're tasked to do to try and manage those dollars. But like I say, the majority of our funds in the community are majority government dollars. But once we start opening up the doors on own source revenues, start generating revenue for the community to start doing other things, that's when we'll start talking at a different note and be able to bring the needs of our communities and the wants of our communities on the table.
Question.
That's just what I was really getting at was the way the money is being wasted on unnecessary ways. That's probably why I brought that up. Is it still being used like that? The way I'd like to know that. Okay. I know I'm not. Maybe I shouldn't be asking these questions at this time, but I'd rather see more people involved in these kind of issues.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a different kind of meeting that you didn't expect me to pop up with these kind of questions. I don't know if it's okay with me asking you guys to.
Again, I think if you have specific inquiries about expenses, we can make the time for you to come and view those documents, and I believe that's the way we've always treated it. If you have specific questions regarding expenses on certain days or items or individuals, I think those things we can accommodate those. However, under our financial administration law that we have in place, there is a process to do, but it'll all start with the request. So again, those things we can accommodate those. However, I'll have to get more specifics when it comes to the specific trust. But now, because of our recent vote, our TLE vote, what we did was, instead of specific trust, that switched that into the legacy trust now. Still the same format, still the same,
It's all put
other
in
than the name. Yeah.
It's all put in one pot.
Yeah. So it's something that's more efficient, better to administrate. We cut costs on administration costs, we streamline the process, and the information that that is being done is under one administration,
Really,
not separate.
it's more towards, what's that big fancy word I'm looking at? They use it a lot for transparency or something
Yep.
like that. I think you know that word, eh?
Accountability, transparency.
Yeah, all that, yeah. That's what I'm really at right now because there's a lot of money there. Should be a lot more money, but
I think over the years too, just based on the performance of that specific claim trust over the years, I think back in 2001 when we did the per capita distribution, I believe it was a $16 million claim. And then we did a per capita distribution, which brought it down to roughly, let's say 13 million. So over the years, we were able to maintain the minimum amount of where that trust can go below, and it has never reached that point. It has never went below, well, I could be mistaken, but I think there's a threshold of 13 million. So based on that, the performance over the years, the specific trust was able to purchase land, buy land, administrate the trust, but also make that trust grow. Today, where we're sitting at, our specific claim trust dollars that's as identified in the account is roughly 15 million. So it has gone up. The administration, the trustees have done their job.
how much is this one we just signed?
It is $30 million
So
claim.
altogether it's 45 million?
45 million when we put it all under one pot, which actually gives us the opportunity to do better investments under one.
So is this,
Yeah.
will this all is going to put together that is going down some of the debt to the families?
Well, there is specific provisions within the legacy trust. Again, those are things that we still have to discuss because again, those are items that still have to be, we still have to have those discussions. Again, what we're trying to eliminate is utilizing those funds to pay down program debt. We don't want to use those dollars for that purpose because, like mentioned from our auditor, when you're just getting money to pay down deficits, that's kind of not a good use of money. Where you want to do investments into our community, like our infrastructure, our housing, our youth, those are positive investments into the community, and even taking a look at our post-secondary people, we're limited again of how many people we can fund, but with these extra dollars, can we put in a master's program or a PhD program that can help these students that are excelling in post-secondary getting that extra support if we allocate those dollars in that fashion.
I think Daryl,
I've got some questions from online. Hey there, so question one, are the regular band meetings going to be shared online? I'm sure there are lots that can't make it to the reserve for those meetings and would like to know what's going on.
Since the TLE vote and the online voting, we see that the people were more receptive and responded better with the online presence. Even with the presentations through TLE and utilizing the online presence, we were able to reach a lot more people who couldn't make it to the presentations, but don't even live in the same province or even in the same country, as a matter of fact. So again, those people were able to see what was being presented. So I believe our council is going to be saying yes to that because it is a better way to reach our membership. in a more efficient way, but casting a bigger span of what needs to be relayed to the membership.
I got more, sorry. Question number 2, when are band members going to be involved in deciding what needs to be done? Why is only one-sided what chief and council want?
Well, again, I'm starting to get into the mandates that our membership nominated or elected us to do as elected officials. Again, those things are when we're elected to do those in our positions, we're also tasked to represent our constituents and our membership to actually make those tough decisions. But at the same time, as we move forward, we start taking a look at community development, and that's another area that we're putting on the table, and we know that it is a must to put something in place. Again, community development involves the consultation with community members, the involvement of community members to help guide and decide the direction that the band wants to go when it comes to making Mistawasis community and its members a better place to live. So again,
sorry, I was just going to say that leads into the next question. Are we going to go back to having committees for each area, such as education and housing, etc.? So they're wondering if you're going to go back to having committees.
I believe that's something that we've been kind of leaning towards. I know in the finance department, we do have a finance and audit committee. In our lands department, we do have a lands advisory committee. So again, we do have specific departments that are moving in that direction, but can we develop a health committee? Can we develop an education committee, a COSEC committee, a housing committee? Those are things that we're actually working on. Currently today, we do have 3 of those types of committees on the go. We're actually working on putting together a housing committee. So again, the call-outs for those types of positions as committee members will be going out shortly. However, there still needs to be some terms of reference drafted up for those specific areas. So.
And last question, are we band members going to be involved in how this $750,000 is spent? How are we going to be involved?
Well, again, the band development dollars is again, in the sense, community development. So, like I stated earlier, those types of dollars will be taking a look at developing those consultation process with the community, getting the band involved. I think it was back in 2014, 15, roughly around there, we did a comprehensive community plan, which required and demanded that we had community members participate in this plan. Again, we were challenged with involvement from the community members. Again, this comprehensive community plan kind of outlined what we would like to see Mistawasis in 25 years' time, or even longer, 50 years. So again, we are definitely interested, we're definitely motivated to start developing that outreach again, so we can get that community consultation back in the decision-making models that we want to support for our community.
Thank you.
So I think I'm really answering everything else here, but so I'm going to turn it over to Colby. I know that there is some questions that I know in the beginning people wanted to ask, but again, I will be coming up again when we do our economic development or MDI presentation. I'm also going to be bringing up our accountant Ronan, but she's also involved with our specific land claim as their accountant also. So again, she does excellent work, does a good job. So she'll be coming up to help me with the presentation.
You're talking about all these different departments that we choose those committee members.
Well, when we talk about the community members, there'll be specific call-outs probably by the specific departments, and Cody might even speak about on the health side. Again, we used to have the health committee back a few years ago, which even in the area of justice, even in the justice committee. But unfortunately, the funding is no longer there. We are working on ways to repair that relationship, but also getting those dollars reintroduced back to the community. So again, there's a lot of things that we're doing to get community members involved. Maybe Colby can maybe speak a little bit on health, but and Robin will also speak. Maybe there's opportunity for a committee for the school, even the high school. I know back in the day too, we even had a junior chief and council that was running very good, but again, because of COVID and all this stuff, it kind of went to the wayside. And it was very good because they would come in and do their reports to chief and council, and they would ask us some point-blank questions too. So it was a good opportunity, and also recruitment for our future leaders. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Kobe. Sorry it took so long. I know once questions started rolling in. So.
It is now 7:04 and our AGM has come to an end, so thank you all. First of all, before I start rambling, I do want to take the time to thank our Elder William for the prayer. And before I get into the health, I do realize that we as a community, both here in the Reserve and far and wide across the country, and even to my family down into the States, was a very historic Friday for us. There were a lot of people behind the scenes that put in a lot of time and effort to making that possible. I do want to give a special shout out to Stephen's dad, actually, Mr. Lawrence Johnstone. After I got elected, I was informed that it was that man who really put a lot of time and effort, many years of hard work and research into that claim. And it's been a lifetime for that man working for that. And I do just want to extend that sincere thank you on my behalf, and hopefully on behalf of the members of the community for that. So if he is watching at home, please reach out and ask how we got to this day. And other than that, I do want to thank all those members that did come out and vote and support the process. I understand, the first time logistically with COVID still being around and the mail being slow, sadly we didn't reach our threshold. But with the help of online voting and a little bit more of a bigger push, we did succeed. So, and then I guess now we can kind of get into the health part of it. I did get designated the health portfolio by the chief after I did get elected. My health background, I wouldn't say is extensive, but I was very happy to accept that responsibility, and I will be kind of talking about a little bit of a blast from the past here. I did get elected midway through, this AGM coming out, but, after talking with Bev and a lot of the staff down there, I do think it's important to take the time to thank those people that did work long, tireless hours through this pandemic. It's not easy to serve a community with this size, with a staff that size. It is important to remember that the whole world is still short-staffed to this day, and it is hard to get people to come to work every day to serve those. So, special shout out to them, and that goes for all our staff, even the ones down at Public Works, keeping our houses filled with water, our sewers empty and everything like that. So, I just want to give a special shout out to them. And along with some of that, a few of the programs, or arguably many of the programs that we did offer down there to complement families, pre and postnatal mothers, some of our addiction services, those sadly did have to get shut down due to, everybody being in isolation and social distancing. And, you know, all those kind of things that we've come to accept as a new normal. You know, early as I got elected, it was, you know, pretty clear how quick, you know, the previous administration and chief and council took how seriously that this virus was impacting the world, and took, you know, some pretty important steps to protect the safety of this community. And like, you know, Dennis said, you know, a lot of people felt that the, you know, the gates at the borders did a good job of monitoring those who did come in and out of the community. If it did offer a level of safety, not only for the virus, but also physical safety and peace of mind for those members. And, you know, I do thank you for that question, bringing that up. And I do think that it's important that we kind of revisit those topics and hear those things of what people either, you know, did like from the response or didn't like from the response. So, like Chief said, I'm sure that that would be a topic for discussion. And then lastly, I know that, you know, seeing it firsthand, you know, not only with my grandparents and, you know, a lot of elders around, and it did affect a lot of our old people being stuck at home for so long and having very little contact. I know that, you know, it is a part of our people to visit and take care of our elders and respect our elders, and sadly, you know, a lot of that interaction got taken away from people. But I also think it's important to really, you know, thank them for their patience, and then also I want to thank the students for their patience. Shutting down our learning institutions is never an easy call. I don't care what level of government you're at, but to take that development in those precious years and classroom time away from those kids is not anything that I think any person, leader, or employee of this reserve take lightly. But it is about their safety, and you know, I'm glad to say that school is in session now, and I hope, you know, with the uncertainty that lies ahead with the Omicron, and according to the news today, a new BA2 variant coming out, you know, that we as a community can get through that and get back to normal, or I guess in today's day and age, whatever the new normal might be. And other than that, as you guys know, there are a few important timelines that we had, you know, that my director did want me to share with everybody. I think probably the most important one for us was the first case that was identified on this reserve was December 15th. And you know, as that first one came along, we all know that, you know, those numbers have went up, and the numbers around August to September there really did jump and kind of got away from us. But as we all know, the province relaxed a lot of restrictions, and you know, people did take it, you know, kind of as an endemic, and thought that we were on the other side of this. I will fully admit that I am guilty of that too. I kind of thought with the vaccinations coming out, and you know, a lot of the good work that our members were doing coming in to get vaccinated, and you know, getting everybody their shots on time, that we were on the downward slope. But as we can still see, COVID is alive and well, and you know, we're still in these uncertain times. So I hope that we can get through this as a community, both to our urban members who, you know, I know living in a city is tough, and there are a lot of struggles that those members go through, and I don't want to, you know, forget those who do live in cities and, you know, still face challenges. Let's see here. And just a few of the measures, I guess, in community here that we did take. A few of them, you know, I was familiar with. I was out here a few times, and I do remember going through the border lockdowns, and you know, to the young men and women who were working those at the time, they were, you know, the utmost professional, and I think they did a great job of keeping this community safe. You guys would be familiar with some of the food security programs that people did get thrown into isolation and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, when we do talk about COVID dollars, it did go to a lot of the programs, I think, that, you know, people, you know, maybe never thought of before. Let's not forget, you know, people did receive money both in reserve, or whether it was a gift card or to our urban members. So those payments would have came out of that, and it did happen more than once. So, you know, when you get into numbers into the 17, 18, 1900 of people getting a couple $100s, it doesn't take long to do the math and realize that some of that stuff does add up. And as well, you know, food is not cheap. You can see the supply chain issues now in the world, and things are slowly going up, you know, every month now. And with the way that inflation is going, it's just getting harder and harder, you know, to budget for some of these numbers that we have to deal with. But those are things that our table has to deal with, and we hope that we can keep delivering those kind of services to everybody. And as well as the school, you can see here that homework packages were distributed to kids, and I think sadly with that, one of the things that really took a hit was the recreation programs that I think a lot of these children really thrive off of, both after school and as well as organized sports teams. And you know, I hope come springtime that we can really get back to a few of those things, as well as bolstering a few of our programs and then bringing in some new things for the kids to really enjoy. So, you know, probably in our next year's AGM, we will get a better comprehensive breakdown of that. Like I said, I am kind of going on the fly of a presentation here, but just bear with me. I am trying to do my best here, but here's another list. I won't go through them, but you can see water delivery and all these kind of things here. And that's why I just wanted to touch on the public works people down there at the hill. I know that after a big snowstorm and sometime like that, these guys, they take a lot of flack from community members, and it isn't easy. I do just want to echo that these guys work tirelessly for us, and they try and get to everybody, but people also have to take into the fact the logistical and geographical location of this reserve, and with the amount of machines and manpower that they have. I live in a city, and we still have streets that are struggling with snow and, you know, piled up and all that kind of stuff. So people do have to take into account, even if you have the most amount of money and the most amount of people, to get all this snow cleared and stuff, it is a real logistical problem. Once you clear the roads, it does have to go somewhere. So I do just want to echo that message. I'm sure that we'll get a couple more blasts of snow, and you know, everybody wants their yard cleared or their driveway cleared the second the last snowflake hits the ground, and it is just almost nearly impossible to do that kind of stuff. So I just want to give a shout out to those guys, Leonard and all the boys down at the hill there, and all that. So where else can I go here? I don't want to speculate. I don't kind of want to go into uncharted territory and back myself into a corner. I'm not quite sure, you know, coming down the line with the feds and also our province as to where we're headed with COVID, and you know, whether our food security program and some of those things will continue. I know that the amount of support that we got and the amount of support that we continue to get, it's never going to be enough, but you have to do the best with what you can. So to all those people that you know, were a part of this well before I got elected, I do just want to say thank you for making the transition for myself, Derek, and Leslie. I guess most of you guys around here would know him as Chippy. I do want to thank those people for making our transition into office, you know, as smooth as could be. And I don't think any of us in our life has ever been elected during the middle of a pandemic worldwide like this. So there has been challenging times and tough decisions and you know, tough topics that we've had to talk about. But you know, shout out to my council and shout out to Chief that we have had, you know, have had a lot of progress, and then hopefully we can continue down this path. So, and there's a couple lovely pictures that you can see right here on the cursor. I believe that is some cleaning supplies that were just delivered to us kind of when we weren't really ready for it, and then luckily Leonard and the boys kind of opened up some stuff. Here's some of our staff down the hill working and preparing some masks for everybody. And then lastly, a list of some of our programs that we do offer. And even nowadays, I know that we still continue to use Jordan's principle. I did become familiar with it after I got elected. I was talking with a young gentleman that I went to school with, Blair Ledoux and Lise, many years ago. I guess not that many, but it feels like it some days. And you know, he was the one that really shone some light on me personally for this, and I did read up on it and really tried to get familiar with that program. And you know, I'm happy to say that we are using that. And you know, before jumping ahead of myself, there is a young gentleman who does call this, school home for a certain amount of hours a day, Glenn, who does deal with cerebral palsy, and we have accessed that program to get some dollars to make more accessible washrooms for him, and get him his own classroom and stuff so that he can be a part and not be treated any differently, just like any other kid. And that's going to go a long way into the future for any other child who has physical disabilities who may attend the school. So, those programs, they really do help, they really do work. And if there are community members that do need help trying to apply for some of these things, please reach out to the health staff down the hill, and they will try their best to see if people qualify. And if they do, get a proposal ready for them to submit. The worst thing that they could say is no. So it is always worth a try, and I just want to echo that message. And then lastly, we kind of get into some of the programs, sadly, that took a hit when COVID did, surface on the reserve, that we did have to shut down. And, for a lot of our mothers who are expecting or have already had their child, we do have our maternal health program, and it is just some things to make life easier, whether it's counseling, getting them some foods, some diapers and wipes and stuff like that. So these are good things to get involved in. And now lastly, we go down to our community addictions program and our safe home. I'll probably touch on the safe home first. I do work with Chippy almost on a day-to-day basis, and I know that his lovely wife Vivian and their staff do a lot of thankless work for some of our kids who are in care down in Leask there. So to all those people, special shout out to them too. And I do believe that early this spring or sometime in the spring, when the weather does get a little bit nicer outside, that we'll have the official grand opening for that once again. Another thing that has been pushed back by the pandemic. And then we will visit our community addictions program, and as you can see there's quite a list of some of the programs that they offer, and then our focus on families. These are very helpful programs for people who might find themselves in crisis or find themselves struggling or need a little bit of help. And I know for a lot of people, when they are going through personal instances, and that can go from addictions to loss to grieving, and the list can go on and on. It is hard to ask for help, but believe me that there are people that work in that health clinic who are willing to help and that are willing to listen to you. A lot of them are voluntary. We are not going to go door to door, and we are not going to make people forcibly enter these programs. That's why I say it's not easy to ask for help, but there are programs down there that we do have operating, we do have running, that are willing to assist our members. To some of our urban members who find themselves in the city, the same goes for them listening out there. If you do find yourself in crisis or in need of some help, we will point you in the right direction as far as what kind of supports we do have in our urban settings. I know that STC does a great job with that, and I can see the good work that a lot of their health staff in the city is doing, even so far as developing that warm shelter place downtown in the city this year. And a lot of people don't realize how far that goes for people, but when the weather dips below -30, I really think that there are a lot of people that can be thankful that the doors are always open to that place, and to the staff that make it welcome. And we do have 2 nurses in the community. I'm sure that Lyndon is quite known by some of our members here. He has been around since I remember I was a little kid at my grandparents, and he used to come and visit and chat with them. So he is still around and doing a lot of good work and service for this community. And they do offer COVID-19 testing, monthly food boxes go out, naloxone training, which I think is a very valuable thing for anybody to learn and learn how to use those kits. There's no denying that drugs that the older generation or the generation before me grew up with are not the same drugs that are out on the street nowadays. Things are a lot more powerful, they're a lot more dangerous. They only take sometimes one of something, or just to be in contact with that something for a person to go into convulsions, seizures, have an overdose. So naloxone training is something that I know both my mother and my sister have, and I'm looking at either learning from them or enrolling in a class one evening to learn how to do that myself, because I think it is a very valuable thing that each and every person could learn, and, you know, almost like having first aid, but just for drug overdoses and things like that. And, oh, I can't forget Colleen. She's our home care nurse, so I don't want to forget all of the people that work down there. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but you know, I think they know that I'm trying not to forget anybody, and at least make sure that, you know, I do touch on some of that stuff. So I guess if there's no questions online, or if Dennis isn't going to grill me with any, I think I'm good to go.
With this, everyone, want to get the whole community vaccinated. I know that all you Europe here, I don't know about Paris, but there are a lot that are adamant against getting vaccinated. What are you going to do with them? Like, you know, because of their accessibility, or, you know, could they be limited?
Yeah, I think at this point in the
But you
pandemic,
can't force them to do it either.
no, and we're not going to pin anybody down. We're not in the business of negotiating and coercing people to do it. You know, they know it's for their safety, and you know, people got smallpox vaccines when they were kids. They got a lot of vaccines when they were whatnot, and people haven't. If people didn't do their job to protect one another back then, I still believe that those viruses would be running rampant. So we're going to continue to advocate, put out facts, believe in the science. We did offer jackets at one time. We offered community hampers. So you know, those were things in the early part of it, but we are now almost two and a half, 3 years into this, and almost a year now with the vaccines. You know, I'll flat out admit it, I have my third vaccine. The first day I got in, I went down to the healthcare clinic and allowed them to take my picture to spread awareness and try and do the right thing by leading by example. And that's really all a person can do. Other than that, everybody has their choice. You know, this is a free country. You know, people are free to go about their business, but I think, you know, we'll have a powwow this spring, and maybe you'll have to show a proof of vaccination or just something like that. We're not going to make it difficult for people to be a part of the community and live, but they also have to realize the consequences that you know, they take upon themselves, and sadly for some of the ones that are most vulnerable and immunocompromised. But to that, yeah, I know that some people want maybe more of an answer, but sadly we're just not in the business of trying to negotiate or coerce people into doing what I believe is the right thing to do. And sadly that doesn't go for just this reserve. I think we see the pushback that's going on all across this country when it comes to vaccines, but you know, you just got to try and do the right thing personally, and I think that that's all that we can do.
So would that limit children of those households coming to school as parents? Would that limit the children that those parents don't want to get the vaccine? Would that limit the children not coming to school, or would they be forced to do online at home then?
I think that's a good question for the principals. I mean, I don't really know if we would you know, prohibit unvaccinated children, given the fact that they are of age to get vaccinated. Sadly, a lot of the children, or I hope children, I hope there's no 18-year-olds in here that come to school here every day. I don't believe that they can sign their own waiver forms, so that's completely up to the parents. And you know, that would be a good question for Denise. I will get back and I'll try and answer that for you, but I don't know if we keep any of our unvaccinated children home due to their parents' beliefs or, you know, or just hard stance on it. But that is a good question, and I'll try and get back to you on that for sure.
So, oh, sorry. Okay, I don't know if you're the right person to ask this question, perhaps the chief, but the question is, it felt like the leadership chose not to let members know how or if we were to be assisted when it first started. Why isn't there regular communication from chief and council?
Do you want to do it?
Thank you, Colby. That was an awesome presentation. If there's any more questions for Colby, he has an email address and has a cell phone number, so I think he's available for that. Can we repeat the question, please, again?
Sorry. It felt like the leadership chose not to let members know how or if we were to be assisted when it first started. Why isn't there regular communication from chief and council?
Again, thank you, member, for that question. There's been a lot of, I I guess, uncertainty at the onset when COVID first materialized. Mistawasis, like many other First Nation communities and communities in general, were kind of set back. They didn't really know how to deal with COVID. So as a result of that, we just basically played it by ear and looked at some of the ongoing efforts that were done by other First Nations and tribal councils to basically get a handle on how to really effectively deal with the COVID pandemic. So again, today, at the end of the day, it's all about taking responsibility. Initially, Chief and Council could only do certain things. We can't force people that are COVID indicated to take the booster shots or the vaccinations. It's incumbent upon everybody to be responsible and take, I guess, account of ways and means of how to really sustain and put this pandemic on hold. But again, at the end of the day, Chief and Council can only do so much. Again, like I say, it was a very steep learning curve when COVID first hit. It just didn't affect Mistawasis. It had worldwide consequences. So not only did Mistawasis not know how to really get it off the ground and deal with it, but there was countries around the world that never had the ability even just to deal with COVID because of monetary considerations and things like that. So there's still countries in this world that don't even have vaccinations. So that's a very, very real live threat. But yeah, I thank the member for that question. When we go back to the issues around the CMU Health Center, a lot of those great initiatives were started by a lady who probably some of you may not remember or may not know who she was. Her name was late Carol Ledoux. Carol was one of our council members, I think in 2015, around there, 16, right? She had a very sincere passion for health in our community. She was taken at a very young age because of, I guess, some illnesses and things like that. So as a result of her commitment to the community and the overall intent of where she wanted to take the health program, we've immortalized her by attaching her name to the health center. So now today it's referred to as the CMU Health Center. So in recognition and honor of a great lady, that had a lot of passion for her community. But also families and siblings and that too. She comes from a very, very large family. So I guess as we continue on with the presentations, Rob, would you mind taking us back to education?
My portfolios are education, Iron Buffalo, and recreation. So first, I want to thank Mr. Duquette. Thanks for opening prayer. And like Kobe mentioned, we want to acknowledge our staff, led by Lawrence Johnstone, and our staff. And we had a lot of community members from different provinces and in community that were helping support the process. But also, I think it's important to acknowledge past leadership that were involved. This was 15 years. The work has been done on this TLE, and I just want to thank them for all that they've done to help get us to this point. So first, going to Iron Buffalo. So Iron Buffalo is our training center. And so we had, and again, because of COVID, the amount of training that we were able to do was limited. So what we focused on was workshops, safety tickets, small training just to try and get people prepared for work. We had 127 intakes that year for 2021, and I think we also, a lot of the work that was done was preparing our clients for employment, so resume building, life skills training, and then job placement. And so with the job placement, we supported things like, if members had to relocate, or if they needed, any type of tools or anything for their job. And then we also did things like the driver's ed program, learners for driver's ed, and yeah, it was a quiet year. And then, so we have 9 staff for Iron Buffalo. And social assistance is also under Iron Buffalo. So we go into here, looks like post-sec. So in post-sec, pretty much every year, we only are limited to, with the amount of funding that we get, we're able to fund 45 students, full-time students, but in 2021, we funded 65 students, and with COVID, there were some extra funds that were given, so we were able to support our students with an extra $3,000 throughout the year, and it was broken up, between monthly installments, just to help get our students through the year. And it was a tough time for our students because the majority of universities went on to online learning, and we found that a lot of our students struggled with the online learning. So we did have a number of students that took a leave, but they're still, some of them have come back this year. So we just try to help support them as best we can through the post-sec. Also, which was new in 2021, was the scholarship bursaries and awards. So roughly 37,000 we gave out for scholarships for our post-sec students. And we also, some of our grade 12 students received some of those awards as well. These are just some of our programs that we offer through Iron Buffalo. I'll go into, let's see what pops up here. It's kind of all over the place, but here goes this elementary. Okay, so CMS, so Chief Mistawasis School. We were only open September, October, and then May till June. So majority of the year, our kids weren't, physically at the school. So what we had to do is we had to move to online learning. So all the students were given laptops, and we do struggle with connectivity in the community. So that's one thing that Chief and Council continues to try to address that issue. And so for the students that weren't able to get Wi-Fi, their homework was hand-delivered to them weekly. So some of the highlights, I guess, when our kids were in physically in school, were our students competed in the Sask Heritage Fair, and we had 8 students that actually won awards in that fair. We also built the greenhouses. We have a greenhouse here as well as one at the high school. And then during the summer, we had a number of camps that were happening throughout the summer. And one of the ones that we started, that I guess our staff started up, was the Youth Climate Change Group. And that's one where, and it goes along with the greenhouse and food sustainability. And so that group, what they did was they had a camp throughout the summer. And in the elementary school, every class started some gardens inside the school. And then what that group did, the climate change group, was they transplanted the gardens into elders' homes and community members' homes. So they're doing good work when it comes to that climate change. we'll move on to the high school. Same thing with the high school, like when we shut down CMS, we shut down the high school for the same amount of time. We ended up, there's our graduates. And it was tough for our graduates because everything, majority of the time it was online. But we did have 12 graduates this in the year 2021. And at the high school, and also here at the elementary school, one thing that we did that year was our teachers had applied for a grant, and they were successful. So both schools now have music and recording equipment to have their own studios. So we're moving in that direction with, and also podcasting. So our students are involved in podcasting, YouTube, creating videos like that. So that's something new for 2021. And along with, what we was talking about, the mental health. Through that year, we had hired 4 mental health therapists that were, one was full-time at the high school, and then the other ones were working with all our students throughout the pandemic. And I guess some of the things that we, that were new, with the land-based we started about 3 years ago. So we've, every year we've grown that program. So our students were snaring, bow making. They built willow chairs and sold them to community members. So they've been doing a lot of good work. We also built a full-size basketball court outside of the high school. And it also has an outdoor training, so like fitness area. Let's see up here. So I don't think there's a slide on here, but recreation is also one of my portfolios. And like Kobe mentioned there, all the sports were put on hold, so there wasn't too much that we could do with the recreation program. But what our staff did was they started taking our kids out golfing. So each kid had their own set of golf clubs, and we were able to we limited the number of kids that we took out each day, so that just COVID safety protocols. So our kids got involved in golf. We also built a paintball course, and so our kids did a lot of that. Again, we bought enough guns and equipment and helmets for everybody so they didn't have to share. We did the fastball program. We didn't play in a league, but what we did was we just had training, and we purchased a batting machine and a batting cage. So we were able to do a few things with our rec program. We also purchased inflatable movie screen, so we had movie nights for the community. So all the youth came out, as well as the community members. And rec. And yeah, so that year there was no sports. Some of the other things, like the health program chipped in and purchased soccer balls and different kind of workout equipment and delivered them to the homes, just to try to keep the kids busy. And I think that's it for my report here. If there's any questions?
Sorry, I just want to say, anyone who's spoken during the presentation, if you could just see myself or Debbie, just so we can put your contact information onto the stream, it'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks for that presentation. Also, the ongoing efforts that Councillor Robin has been involved with also have been a lot of other activities that he doesn't, acknowledge, but he does a lot of good things behind the scenes to support community and our youth development programs. One of the biggest challenges that Robin alluded to is connectivity. When you speak about connectivity, it's the way how we can send emails, how we can watch Netflix, and right now we've been challenged, I guess, with SaskTel. We've applied and lobbied and did all that we could to try and entice SaskTel to work with Mistawasis to create and put a cell tower within Mistawasis to, I guess, extend that opportunity for our kids now that with COVID, with online learning and that, because some of our communities are not even in a realm around connectivity. So as a result, our kids have no ways and means of getting educated while they're at home. So I mentioned that there's Sask's Power built three towers around the community. The first one you probably seen was by Mr. Troy coming out of Leask. That's one cell tower that was supposed to have entered probably half of our community, which never did. And they built another one just by Mount Nebo, and that one too was supposed to hit the north part of the community. And they built another super cell tower just west of the reserve. You're going towards Emerald Lake, that way, Marcus Lake. And that one's supposed to be the best tower that they said would improve a lot of connectivity. But as a result, we still have the dead zone right in the heart of our community. So we're lobbying hard enough to try and find alternate avenues to get connectivity to the community. I think we're on the verge of getting a couple of those considerations, but we'll know in a few days, maybe a week or so, if that's a viable initiative. Maybe I'll ask Steve to come up and speak to economic development. Steve, if you don't mind.
Good evening again. I failed to acknowledge our elder here for opening our AGM in a good way, and it's always good to acknowledge our creator and ask for that guidance, moving our community forward, not only for our members, but also in some good words out there for our community members from leadership. Again, I'm going to go to the part on the annual report, which actually outlines just some of the, basically within the annual report is just my message. But I'm going to go straight into the PowerPoint that our CEO, Robert, prepared for us to actually outline some of the areas that were in question. Just opening it up here, and you can follow along through the presentation, also online. So I got this PowerPoint presentation prepared for our membership, just to kind of outline and highlight some of the good work that we've been doing on behalf of the nation. Again, Misty Ventures has been around since 2011, but since then there has been a big revamp. I think some of the history that everyone knows, that we tried economic development, and there's always been attempts in economic development for many, many years, but to no avail. Some of the options that the department had gave our nation to try didn't work for us. It failed again. So back in, I think it was 2014 or 2015, even around there, Chief Council made a decision to revamp our economic development portfolio and actually revamp our economic development board. So back in the day, our board consisted of non-band membership that really had no vested interest in our community. But the Chief Council seen the potential of recruiting our own band membership to actually launch our economic development arm, and recruited some very good people to work for the nation, not only as CEO but also bringing on board members that have that experience and knowledge to carry our nation forward. Again, this is our board of directors today. Again, the board of directors, starting from left to right, is Greg Mistawasis, again, former leader of the community, but also helped spearhead the revamping of the Misty Ventures Inc. of where it is today. We also have another board of director, Gary Daniels, again, a very, very knowledgeable individual that gives us guidance from the corporate sector, from the corporate world. Our new board member is Judy Rocher. She is a law student, which also has experience in the area of employment and training. She actually came from BC. She was living there for quite some time, but got a lot of knowledge in that area, areas of corrections, but also because she's very interested in corporate law, we found that it was a natural fit for her to join us as one of our board of directors. And myself, I sit as chair, act as ex officio. I really don't have any voting rights, but I do oversee the NBI to help the board conduct its business. And then there's Bobby Daniels, or Robert Daniels, who's our president and CEO of Misty Ventures. And also part of our Misty Ventures team, we got Carol Mistawasis, who's the manager over at Misty Petro. We got Yvonne Cronin as our bookkeeper accountant. McCurcher is our legal support for all business transactions and legal and advice moving forward. We also contract an individual in a company called Opportunity Knox to help us in the area of capacity when it comes to planning, business planning and doing the studies, and also moving our organization in a good way. And then for a communication aspect, we have a company called Refresh that actually oversees our website as our host and designer. Here's a suite of all our companies under Misty Ventures under the partnership. We have Misty Burton, which is actually 51. We are 51% owners of Misty Burton, and 49% is Burton Aggregates. Then we have our Misty Property Management, which is 100% owned by Misty Ventures. We also have Misty Chemco, which is another 51% ownership from Misty Ventures, or Misty Chemco, and Chemco is a 49% owner of that company. We also have our our Misty Petro, which is 100% owned and operated. Then we take a look at our Misty Ventures, Misty Clifton, which is our civil engineering, again another 51-49% ownership structure there. And we got our Misty Storage and Containers, which is again 100% ownership from Mistawasis or NBI. And then we also have our HCC group, which is where we're 21% ownership of this company, which is doing very good work for our nation, for our community, and we're going ahead in leaps and bounds in that company.
What's that last one?
HCC.
What do they do?
They're the mining and demolition company that we have ownership in.
Where's the kind of contracts do they?
Particularly right now, they're into the potash mining. There's a number of mines that they're in. Again, we have in the Atlantic and Just can't think of the other line, but they're heavily enrolled, sorry. So there is a lot of work that's being done there. Again, the technology that our company has is somewhere that it's second to none when it comes to the mining operations that they do. A lot of it is underground work. Again, as part of the presentation and our audit presentation, Misty Ventures and Mistawasis seen that there was an investment opportunity to actually put more steel underground so we can guarantee more contracts for this company, HCC, for extreme mining as part of the arm of HCC. So as part of that, they were able to secure and solidify a lot of good contract work for in the potash industry. So again, we're doing a lot of good work in that area. I'm very happy to say, but again, 2020, 21, there will be some announcements coming shortly from Misty Ventures regarding the success that this company and our other companies have achieved over the 21-22 fiscal period.
So, do you have anything with recruiting workers here from the community?
There always is we have a working relationship with our Iron Buffalo Center. Again, the recruitment process when it comes to the mining industry is very stringent, but also requires a lot of, it also requires experience. And that's one of the areas that we're really trying to overcome regarding the training aspect of our membership is getting our membership to actually be in those fields. I know right now we do have one individual that actually started in the Misty Chemical field. His name is Ken Badger. He just recently was hired by HDC. He's actually working underground one of the potash mines today. So again, it is a slow recruitment process. The more people we can get involved or interested in that mining sector, again, it's a very tough job to be in, very demanding, and also it's also dangerous. So again, there's when it comes with danger, there's also good pay. So those are things that we are trying to recruit. Again, it's a tough task, especially during these times. A lot of the membership who are willing to work are out there working, but at the same time, this COVID has really impacted a lot of the business sectors, industry. It really impacted availability of workers to be in this industry and to actually call them back to work. Because again, those are some of the challenges that these companies have been dealing with, we have been dealing with here in the community. Again, it's a task that we're trying to find out ways to actually get our membership in tune and interested in working in this field. I'm just trying to get this thing working. It kind of has reminded itself of the battery is dying.
Don't these different businesses, are they going to be providing eventually training for community members?
The training aspect of it, I know this is a training.
Going down and everything, but eventually.
Yeah. Again, in the specific area, I believe there is the training opportunity at these sites solely, but to try and work with our Iron Buffalo to try and implement training programs for community members. That's another challenge too. Just because of the restrictions, COVID restrictions, we do want to offer more training packages for community members so they can get into this field again, but these are specialized areas too. So again, it's not only miners that we're looking for engineers, we're looking for every area that we feel that that what these companies have, we know our people can do the same if given that opportunity. So again, there is, we are working with, just yesterday at our MBI meeting, quarterly meeting, we were talking about that very instance about working in coordination with our training center and one of our companies who is trying to recruit truck drivers and trying to recruit carpenters and construction workers to try to help out in this area because he's having problems with recruiting and retaining his employees because of the pandemic and some of the options that are given to the people when it comes to this whole thing that really hurt the industry was when they initiated the CERB. Unfortunately, it was very challenging. Once the CERB ran out, again, impacted a lot of people. Not only the people receiving, but the employees, the employers, and had a hard time getting our people back, trying to get back to work. And those were the challenges that not only we had here in the community, but our companies had too. Even, and this one here, Misty Petroleum, very challenging to try to get even our own band members to apply for the postings when it comes to gas jockeys and cashiers. We get as many as we can to work for our community, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. And when there is positions that need to be filled, we need to fill them. We're trying to do as much as we can to retain Aboriginal or Indigenous people to be working for our companies. We're doing the best we can, and we've been very successful at doing that, as it is for our own people. Again, we are always recruiting and trying to advertise to our people to try to apply for those positions when they do come available.
So quick question, and perhaps it's covered in the presentation, but what are the profits from these companies and how do the members benefit?
When I bring up our accountant, she will kind of outline some of the information that was outlined in the audit report and actually address some of those questions when it came to the statement where we showed a loss. And when our auditor was speaking about the differences between profit and not-for-profit organizations, the difference in reporting when it's a not-for-profit is accountability. But when it's for-profit companies, it's all about profit and loss, if you made money or lost money. So again, even in the statements that are, and some of the titles at the bottom of the page where it shows surplus or deficit, that's on the not-for-profit type of reporting that goes out to, and that's majority of what's in these reports here. But when you come to economic development and for-profit accounting, it's either you made a profit or you made a loss. And unfortunately, when there is startup companies, there's always introducing new business opportunity, new clients, new customers, working in a way and trying to guarantee or to prove that you have the capacity and wherewithal to be able to match, meet, or beat the competitor that's in that same area. And in the area that we're at, why we're doing so good in the HEC is because we're the only, I can honestly say we're the only First Nation-owned company that has partnership and ownership that's underground and working in this potash and mining industry. So again, we're doing some good work, but at the same time, understanding that once we get a handle on our other companies about the profit and loss, again, I'll have Yvonne, our accountant, give an understanding of what that means and the track that we're on to make those improvements, or to talk about which is something new to Indian country and to us is wealth management. That's something new for us. So again, I'm very excited going into this fiscal year and the report that we're going to get for 21-22 year end. I think finance is mind of its own, but I'll just go wherever it's at right now. Misty Petroleum, again, 100% owned. I'm not going to read everything there, but it's been maintained and the maintenance and everything has been done independently. Again, when we talk about trying to make improvements to our properties, again, where our Misty Petroleum is located is on a piece of land that was purchased through our spec claim, and because of that, it has returned, it did retain reserve status through the ATR process, the addition to reserve process. But when that happened, funding didn't flow with that transfer. Now it's the responsibility of the nation, if we want to grow and develop it or put infrastructure in there, we have to do it out of our own coffers, to our own source revenues, to try and improve these properties that we're trying to make a goal of. And right now, one of the properties that we're invested into, or there's actually two, is the Lucier property, which is where Misty Petroleum is located, and our Dalman property. Okay, Misty Ventures Storage and Containers, again, it's right now it was under its own entity, but based on what our board of directors and through the advice of trying to streamline the process, we're deciding that we're going to make our storage and containers as one of the suites of Misty Petroleum. Because the storage site is located right next door to Misty Petroleum, it just made common sense that we should just run it out of Misty Petroleum and put it under those books and streamline the whole process. So again, that's a move that's going to be made. I know they acquired 4 new 40-foot units that are going to be used for storage of not only personal belongings, but they're large enough to store ATVs and side-by-sides and stuff like that. So again, we're opening that door to start that. One of the bins there, or two of the bins, the smaller bins. Misty Ventures property management. Again, primarily, when you think Misty property management, you think you got property all over, but primarily the start of it is janitorial and landscaping services. Again, we're trying to diversify and expand that. However, it is a tough industry to get into because it's 100% owned and operated. We still have to prove ourselves that we're able to be competitors in this industry. So there are talks about trying to strike up a partnership with an already existing company to try and move this and give legs to this opportunity for the nation. So Again, there's some work happening there. Here is one of our other companies that we've made an investment into. Mistawasis is actually has acquired some of the assets within this company called Misty Burton Concrete. Again, the manager is the previous owner of this company. Just like talk about goodwill or bringing on some of the expertise and contacts and the work that followed this individual. We retain this individual to do that type of work for Misty Burton. There's right now the main source of work that's being done for Misty Burton is in and around the North Battleford, Saskatoon area. I'm just doing work here in the community at Takatu. They've been all over in this region doing smaller projects, but they did do a few large projects in Saskatoon for the city of Saskatoon. So again, trying to expand, diversify, make more of a presence is one of the things and the challenges that we are experiencing with this company. Here's some of the work that this is a bin that they did before, some quality of steps that they do. So Misty Chemical Contractors, again, this is a company that did some work in the community, you know, with the road that's beside my place by the, call it the Baptist Church Road, I'll call it. Or I think here in the community we call it Marcel Bouquet Road. I think that's the road that we call it, that east side road of the village. That's the road that they built up. It's actually a fairly good road, and that's where the Ken Badger made his appearance there and continued working for a group of companies. So again, from that work that started. To this day, he moved from Misty Chemical to HCC, and he's still going, which is a win for the community. So again, they're doing some bigger projects. Again, Sask Power, HPP, Billiton, they did do some contract work. Again, there's some of the contracts that they talk about, like it's not in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, this is like in the tens of millions of dollars. That this is the type of work that these companies are doing. In the past, this company had always worked under the Chemco name, but because of our talks, back probably about 4 or 5 years ago, Chief and Council approached Chemco and said, we need more. We want more of a presence, and we want to be able to work something out where we're seeing Misty Chemco getting some of that work. So over the past number of years, we've been strategizing, working on ways to get more of the Misty Chemco name up there. And right now, I think one of the contracts that are happening down south, Misty Chemco is one of the two that are going to be is in the running to get this. I think it's a $72 million contract. So again, those are good things that I know that we're going to be working toward. I just can't say where and when, but these are some of the good work that our Misty Chemco is doing. Some of the hazmats that they do, more of instrumentation and electrical engineering company. Misty Clifton too did some work out in the community. When we first did our reclamation, I believe, there was some work done at the old garbage dump sites there, and we had to get those assessments done, making sure that the job was done right. That's where they kind of made their first presence out here in the community. But from discussions and talks, we decided, hey, let's try to strike up a partnership here. And lo and behold, we have Mr. Clifton. There are some work that Mr. Clifton is doing right now. Right now, there's still some non-disclosures that we have to adhere to, but we will be making some announcements in the near future on some of the work and the good work that we're going to be doing. Here's the HCC. Again, I have to correct myself, we're 24% owners of HCC. Again, the main job, as you can see on the bullets there, is underground mining and demolition. So when you talk about demolition, it's not like housing, knocking down walls. This is the use of dynamite and building things that way. So that type of demolition that these guys do. So it's particularly used in the mining industry, and it's a more cost-effective way to do things done. Here's some of the work that they've been doing on the ground. So some of these machinery that we see is some of this. I think the machine on the right is what we purchased. When we went and put iron under the ground. Again, once these pieces of machine go underground, they'll never see the light of day again. That's where they'll stay. When they bring this machine down, they take it piece by piece and assemble it underground, and once it's there, it'll never come up. So when we talk about securing work in the future for these machines, it's pretty much guaranteed, because they're not going to take this machine out of the pump ever until it becomes inoperable, and then that's it. They'll have to replace it with a new one. So we're going to get to the financial summary, the financial notes, and just to answer a little bit more questions that Dennis had, and maybe other people who are viewing may have. Again, Yvonne will be here to answer any questions in regards to our financials. And also, just recently, basically today, we did part 2 of our investment policy work that we've been doing with the board. Again, this is new territory for us, for Misty Ventures, but also in the future for Mistawasis in general. And once we start talking about investment policies and wealth management, this is exciting times for us, and I just can't wait to see the day where we flip the script on the allocations that we depend upon government funding to operate our nation. Again, I like to say that we get 95% of home source revenue. That's what we operate, and 5% of our revenues that we get from the feds is what that is. So again,
when is she coming?
She's right here.
right here.
Oh.
She's flying in. Okay, so again, quarterly reports that she presents to us. Again, our board only meets on a quarterly basis. We just finished our quarterly meeting yesterday. We did our third quarter report, and again, things are looking up for Misty Ventures, but again, we're just reporting on 2021. So, Yvonne, if you want to come up.
Sorry, there's a question online for you. Question is the conflict of interest that you, Stephen, are a councillor and on the Kemco board?
Like I mentioned earlier, I'm ex officio and I'm a chair, so I don't have voting rights on this board. So again, but I'm there to conduct the meetings. I'm there to ensure that I can do this with the membership, present to the members the business and the operations of Misty Ventures to make sure that and act on behalf of Misty Ventures from representation from council.
Thank you for your answer.
Do you work with Gary too?
Gary is the board member, yes, yeah.
So are you? So are you?
Pardon?
So are you also?
Yeah, I'm a board member too. I'm the chair, actually. Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to your AGM. I have worked with the MBI group since October of 19, I think. So my job as bookkeeper and accountant, what I've found the job in there is that I help advise, I make sure the books are done professionally, and then I end up being that liaison between the board of directors, the CEO, and the auditor. Because the auditor, as you would know with your band audit, their job is just to take the books and give an opinion. Are they right? Are they accurate? Are they reasonable? And Jason does the same audit review with the board of MVI that he did tonight for membership. So the AGM here is to talk about the band audit and how all the programs, all of the finances flow into that audit. So he does the same thing with the MVI board. He comes and does a consolidated audit, and he takes the financials from all of the groups, ones that we own wholly, as in 100%, and ones that there's a partnership in. And he takes all of those and he puts them together and he presents them to the board for the approval there. So that part's been done. What happens under audit then is one or two line items pulls over into the audit, which is what you saw tonight. And MVI for the year ending March 21 did have a loss. And so I'd like to speak to that, not in specifics, not that this business made this much money and that much sales, because that's not the forum of this presentation. It's the overview, but to talk a little bit about the difference between, as Stephen alluded to, the difference between programming and funding and the difference between business and operations. So in programming, you're allotted X amount of dollars, you get them every month, and with your good work of your administration, you come with a huge surplus. Well done. That's not the norm, just so you know. So the goal then is just to very consciously use the money that you're allotted, okay? The difference in business is, you say, I'd like to sell widgets today, and to sell widgets I need to borrow money to buy the widget back. And then I have to find people to work there, and then I have to find people who want to buy the widgets, and then I have to have all this upfront money, and then if I'm lucky, at the end of the year, I made money. Now, the ones that get to do that on the very first year they open are few and far between. So my background is, I am a CPA, I work the same as Jason does, except he does audits and that's boring and horrible in my mind. I get to do the fun stuff and work right with the businesses, work with the economic development groups. I work with 4 different ones. The idea of what I do is help bring the expertise to the table, to the board of directors, to the CEO, and just give an outside source opinion and say, hey, maybe you should take Nisky Storage and instead of having it in a separate company, which has costs of its own, why don't you just merge it into Nisky Petroleum? Because then you don't have to pay extra accounting fees, extra year-end fees, extra corporation fees. So we look at that. So it's been a year and a half that I've been working with them. And so we're, as Stephen said, we just finished stage 2 of an investment strategy workshop. What we're trying to do is say, when we look at a new business, what are the criteria? What do we want to see? What's good for MVI? Which turns out to be what's good for your nation, what's good for your people. It all flows down. Where Stephen said he'd like to see that your own source revenues are 95%, and then your ISC funding is 5%. That means that you've looked after yourself. Now, when you have a business, That doesn't happen in day one. It doesn't necessarily happen in year one. And when you get to year 3, you've probably done a couple investments where you go, yeah, in hindsight, that wasn't a good idea. What did we learn? What will we not do again? And that's what our investment strategy was today. We were going, what criteria do we want? What makes it good? We set out the long-term game plans of what they want to do. And I can tell you right now, the principles that they picked were not, well, let's just make a lot of money and spend it all. No, it was like, how do we give back to our community? How do we make jobs for our membership? How do we have wealth management? How do we have enough money to go, what do we want to do with it? How do we want to do with it? And those are the long-term goals that they've set out. To get there, it takes time. Did it lose money this year? Yes. It was a tough year for a lot of businesses. Depending on the area you're in and the type of business you're in, some of them were fabulous, like small town grocery stores, really did well this year. Mining industry, not as well. Concrete industry,
How much did they lose?
I looked at so many numbers tonight. Stevie, what's it? It was 130 or was it 260? 230? Thank you. I'm sorry, I should have that number better in my head. The overall, we lost $230,000. When you looked at, JC presented the funding from Chief and Council or from the nation to there, there's $1 million invested in it. And of the FMFA loans that are on your books, $3 million of it is being paid back by the MDI group. So the long and short of my presentation is say that being in business is a lot different than running a municipality or a community or a band. You have to look at it differently. You have to say, what are we in business for and what do we hope to do with it?
How much was board members paid a year?
The board members?
Do they get paid every year?
They get paid per diem when they attend meetings, like a general industry standard. They meet 4 times a year, and they do meet more than 4 times a year. They meet 4 regular quarterly meetings. So my job is to have financial statements prepared for all 5 of the ventures that they do internally and present them. They meet all day to review them, ask questions, make decisions and that. So they have 4 of those a year, perhaps an audit meeting, audit and finance meeting, and if there's any professional development, like an investment strategy workshop.
Yeah, where do they have the meetings?
Mostly it's Saskatoon in the urban office. So I can talk about numbers and finance and business forever, but like you guys have been here a long time already. So don't get me started.
Hey, do they ever go to places or meetings like Edmonton or Calgary or Vancouver or something like that?
Since I've been involved, that I was included in, we did a meeting workshop in Enoch, in Edmonton in November. Part of it was the investment strategy, was one day. The other part was meeting with Rosalie, the CEO of the Enoch Economic Development Corporation, and a little brainstorming about what's happening there. So yes, that's the only ones. Otherwise, we meet in Saskatoon at the office. Any other questions of me?
Unless, do you happen to have, do you happen to know off the top of your head who's on the audit and finance committee?
They're being appointed as part of the investment strategy. We're waiting for several members to put their hands up, is what we're doing. I also did a business analysis with them, and one of the business analysis things was you should have an audit and finance committee. So it's in the works of being who wants to sit on it. So I don't have a name for you yet.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, there we go.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Yvonne, for that presentation. The last presenter will be Les. I have regrets for Councillor Derek. He had to go to the hospital. His father-in-law has been battling, I guess, a ailment that might lead to, some serious consequences down the line. But he's suffering from a serious disease. I'm not sure how much time he has, but that's where he is right now. Derek is with his wife, and they're attending his wife's father. He's not doing too well. You guys know his name is Warner Goodvoice. He's from Walpayton Reserve. So prayers out to Derek and his family for his father-in-law and his wife's father. Just short little commentary on where we're currently going now. As you're all aware, C92 has been effectively legislated directive to basically give First Nations the ability now to start taking control and management over their child welfare affairs. Basically, it's legislation. So Mistawasis is working on that file as we speak. So when the next AGM comes around, I'll probably have a lot more information to deal and talk to you about C92 as we move forward. Just for another point of note, we are planning a traditional powwow again this summer. God willing, and with hopefully COVID will have subsided to the point where we can basically start getting into ceremonies like powwows once again. So those dates have been tentatively set for it's a weekday powwow, July 19th to the 22nd, I think, of this year. So if everything goes good, then we are still committed to having and hosting our traditional powwow. Wes?
Thank you, Chief. I'd also like to acknowledge the elder. Thank you for moving prayer. My portfolio is lands and justice. And of course, you all handle the housing portfolio, which is one of the biggest portfolio we have in Zero now. But the guy that directs the land there now is Lawrence Johnstone, so I'll just go through the profile here at the Land Resources Department. I'll just go over a little bit of history there. Chief Mistawasis, he was the first signatory of Treaty 6 on August 23rd, 1876, near Fort Carlton. And on May 8, 17, 1889, an area of 77 square miles were set aside for the use and benefit of all members of Mistawasis First Nation. Mistawasis area, the main reserve is located in central Saskatchewan, 100 kilometers west of Prince Albert, 150 kilometers north of Saskatoon, 150 kilometers east of North Delaware. Main service central is East Saskatchewan. This is really north. In 1911, 1917, 1919, Mistawasis surrendered 18,155 acres to Canada. The land claim in 2001, Mistawasis entered into a specific land claim settlement agreement with Canada for 18,155 acres. Through the settlement agreement, Mistawasis had the ability to purchase additional acres of land in Saskatchewan, and transfer those lands into reserve status under the additions to reserve process in Canada. And one of the biggest achievements we've made to date is on January 16, 2017, members of the Mistawasis held a vote to ratify the land code under the framework agreement of the First Nations Land Management Act, FNLMA. The Mistawasis land code was approved by the membership. On March 9, 2017, the Mistawasis land code was formally certified by a verifier. I think this is one of the biggest achievements we've made because it gives us the ability to administer, manage, and control our lands and take our lands as destiny we want to go. So that is a very big achievement for us. The Lands and Resources Department, the Chief Council is mandated under the Lands Code to monitor land activities on Mistawasis lands. We all know that, but I think one of the history we made too is that we're the only tribal council in Saskatchewan that has all First Nations lands within the tribal council part of that First Nations land management process, so it's a good thing, yeah. And during the process, we also selected a lands committee members, which are Michelle Watson. She was very instrumental in environmental issues that she studied. She's the chairman of our committee right now. And Ken Johnson, he was involved with mixed farming with his dad. He did crops and raised cattle. So he's knowledgeable in that. Anita Ledoux was currently taking university classes in lands and environment also. Irwin Turner, he's kind of very instrumental in traditional and cultural aspect of the land base, so he knows all that. And of course, Eddie Ledoux was kind of a historian guy. He has a lot of history behind him. He goes to business elders, and he's more or less of a reporter. He does all that. So that's our lands committee members. And of course, our lands and resource staff, we have Lawrence Johnson, who is the director. Kelsey Watson is the lands technician officer. And Debbie Watson back there, she's the lands administrative assistant. This is our current Mistawasis land base. We got to 30,720 acres of land reserved. We got Mistawasis Reserve 103, 163 acres. Mistawasis 103D, 336 acres. Mistawasis Reserve 103C, 300 acres. Mistawasis Reserve 103D, 4,813 acres. Mistawasis 103E, 30 acres. Mistawasis 103F, 350 acres, 15 acres. 103G, 69 acres. 103H, 318 acres. 103I, 146 acres. 103, what is that? J, 625 acres, and 103L, 160 acres. Total land base of 37,986 acres. The lands purchased under the specific land claims and additional reserve status is Smith property, 145 acres. Fox property, 713 acres. Gary property, 1,791 acres. The Tencheco property, 1,084 acres. Steppen property, 67 or 57. McIntosh property, 148. Stepanski property, 621 acres. Devin Goldberg property, 150 acres. And that was located 1 mile from the U.S. border, so that's way over there. Hunting property, 14 acres. Common land overflows, 378 acres, a total of 5,196 acres. Specific land use.
Yeah, you're going for 27. Battery might be starting to die.
Land base, so this we're going to quickly here. On Mistawasis Reserve 103, approximately 11,520 acres are held by members under the Certificate of Possession, which is CD. We have 12,240 acres under cultivation comprised of CP land and land, so that's together. The revenue generated from CP lands is $341,717,000. These funds go to the CP holders. Revenue generated by land lands is $218,422. And these funds go to the band, and the band funds. Mistawasis Property Taxation Law, 2017, and the Mistawasis Property Assessment Law, 2017, were enacted by the Chief and Council under the First Nations taxation. And saying that these laws give Mistawasis the ability to impose a tax on members that are farming our land or using our lands. In 2020-21, we collected $95,882 in tax revenues from agricultural land that is farmed by non-members of the Mistawasis. And note the taxation laws do not apply to the members of Mistawasis. It's good. Well, we also initiated a traditional land use study with the intent of maintaining, conserving, and recording our knowledge and understanding of our history and identifying our historical and cultural traditional lands. Mistawasis land and other lands related information will be updated on the Mistawasis website under the Departments of Lands. So, I think that's all I got for lands. And on any questions on land so far?
Sorry. Who decides which land to purchase? Are band members involved in the process?
At this point in time, we have the amalgamated the specific land claims with the TLE. Back in the day, it was this specific land claim, and they have known as trustees, and they work with Roger Daniels, and he goes out and looks for land, and ratified by the chief of council or whatever. And over time, it becomes reserve status, but that's 90 times.
How about what's happening in Pines and
Okay, I'll do an update on that. October of last year, we experienced some forest fires. In October, you don't usually have forest fires. But we have some dwarf mistletoe there. We have, it's called forest fuel, that's dead wood. And there's 3 areas that were set previously on fire. So we learned that by that, and so what we did is, through leadership and lands, we did a fuel fire reduction program. That's when we take the dwarf mistletoe. It's a crowning. When it doesn't burn, it crowns, and it destroys all of our healthy forests there. So it's called dwarf mistletoe management right now. So we trained 7 people, power saw training, safety aspect of it. They got their ticket, and we got 5 guys out there. Wayne Bird is the supervisor. Got TJ, Tristan Pachawas, Tobias Constant, Shay Constant, Wayne Ledoux, Loretta Drever, and Jerry Sanderson. 2 ladies here. So they're doing good, and just people wondering what we're doing up there, that's exactly what we're doing.
is there anything to do with, in the future, is there anything that, is it going to be clear cut there for a golf course? I'll get right to the point here.
Well, it's in the process. It's not really decided yet. It has to go to the people for, it's part of the community plan, right? Yeah. It's in.
Whose plan is it though? Whose plan?
Community plan, but it's not going to be it won't be passed when they take it to the people.
Community plan, is it just one person?
Oh, no, community plan, that's what it says it all, community plan. Community plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a golf course.
People, no, it's not really decided yet. It's in the works. It's just a plan right now. It's not going to be really initiated, so. It could be.
First heard about it about maybe 2.5 years ago. I don't know if it's going to go through a voting process or what, or is it going to be? It should go through a voting process or something like that, for the community to come together and make a choice on that if they want it or not.
Well, I think that
Not just the chief of council or whatever.
No, he'll never go to, chief and council never didn't go with lands or waters, it has to go to the community board.
Yeah.
If that was voted a yes, then it will be designated just for that purpose, or golf course, or whatever.
That's the reason why I brought that up was because of the area is so beautiful over there.
It is.
And I really wouldn't want it to ever be made into something for profit or whatever. I think it should be left the way it is. I hope if the people are watching on the TV there or on the computer, word gets around that it should be left the way it is, and I hope they go by what I'm trying to emphasize for the future, because we don't have too much of this kind of land in Saskatchewan. We're right on a reserve, so we're pretty lucky to have that beauty, and it should be left the way it is.
Yes, I agree with you.
Many ceremonies were held there. That's probably why I'm really emphasizing it to be just left the way it is.
Yeah.
For the future of our grandchildren, great-grandchildren.
Yes, absolutely. But in saying that, I think we've been talking about this in the chambers, that we do need a conservation officer out here. We have no conservation officers on federal land, but on provincial, they sure look after their property. But I think I'd like to see training involved in respect to First Nations getting together to create their own conservation program, right? So that's what I like to, that's what I wish was,
Good thought, yep.
And on the justice part of it, the peacekeeping program, like we all know, they're just limited to what they can only do so much. They just monitor yards and stuff like that. But we got Jason Johnson, he's the supervisor at this point in time. His full-time positions are Gordon Daniels, Raymond Sanderson, Eleanor. Who? Yeah, I can't believe it. I just know her as Eleanor and Kemp. Brandon Badger, Jordan Badger, Hubert Badger. And weekends it's Colton, Lindsay, Leona Falcon, and Dennis, right?
Yeah.
We do weekends, yeah. So I think that's it for my presentation. But you got my numbers 466-7654, or you can get hold me on my email, chippercharles@gmail.com. And just one more last thing here. Lawrence wanted me to present is we all sit on we all help each other on the housing thing. And that's a big area. So just to give you a housing update, there's 215 units on the reserve right now, 50 CMHC units, 165 values, and they're all fire insurance and all that, and infrastructure services. All units are serviced by natural gas. All units have water service. There's 47 cisterns. Water is delivered on a regular schedule, 11 wells, 157 connected to water treatment plants. All units have sewer disposal, 50 septic tanks pumped out on a regular schedule. You have 29 lagoons and jet systems, 136 hooked up to the main sewer line. So, and all units have solid waste disposal. All units have the roads and driveways that have to be maintained. Approximately 44 miles of roadway and 15 driveways. Units for cistern and septic tanks are kept clear from access by service trucks and machines. One of our, Colby, I know, is very proud of is we're going to have a net zero unit constructed on Mistawasis by 220 over Saskatoon, and that's going to be serviced by solar energy, so that's why it's called net zero. So projected completion is March 31st, 2022. We have 2 new builds coming up, completed under the CMNC program. 2 new units built due to the fire loss, replaced by fire insurance. And the housing policy was delivered to each housing unit and occupants, so to be presented to all membership for ratification. And our new housing coordinator is Cynthia Canapes. Her office number is 466-2259. Cell number is 639-933-7223. You want me to present that, so thank you so much. Any questions on housing?
I guess just to pass on a comment, someone said that they dislike how the berry and sweetgrass areas were destroyed. Oh, just a comment online. I think it's in regards to the burn. Is they dislike how the sweetgrass and berry area was destroyed. I don't know anything about it.
Thank you so much.
Oh, other question was, how do we contact the chief and council when their contact information isn't posted anywhere?
Yes, it's on our website. All our emails are on there, and our cellular numbers are there as well. I guess on the final point on the lands department, as you paying attention as part of the ongoing efforts of our lands department, we've engaged the services of an external contractor to assist us in developing and understanding where our traditional lands, have always been. We've maintained throughout, I guess, a number of decades and centuries now that we have maintained this land probably in excess of 1,000 years. Our ancestors have trekked around these areas for years and years and eons and eons. So in that, I guess, regard, Mistawasis embarked on a very unique initiative, similarly to what they have in Alberta. They have consultation offices in all their First Nations, and they deal directly with the resource and government. In Alberta, it's mainly the oil and gas sector that First Nations have their relationship with. So as a result of that relationship, they get benefit agreements because it's their traditional land. Benefit agreements can amount to millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars on a yearly basis. So that in itself helps fund, the non-fund areas in those communities in Alberta. So that example is what Robert and Roger and a few of the band members embarked on when they went to Edmonton to begin those discussions with, I think, 3 First Nations: Enoch First Nation, Sucker Creek, or Sucker River, and as well as Ochis. Ochis and those 3 communities that I've named all have impact benefit agreements with the province or industry around the traditional land areas. So Mistawasis engaged, I guess, due diligence. We have our traditional land use area identified. Now we're working with the province and with industry to begin that process of identifying a process on how we can start engaging, I guess, industry and province to come and meet with Mistawasis, because we do have that inherent ability to dictate our destiny. So we have that ability now to begin that process. But I think as we progress down this path, it's really an infant process right now in its infancy. So I'm thinking by the next time we report to the membership, we'll have a more detailed explanation of where this consultation office is going. But we are in the process of looking and recruiting for that office as well. So again, on behalf of your council, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for coming out this evening and being patient and listening to the presentations. I know that we have to do a better job in refining, the time frame. We probably will have to 5-6 hours this afternoon, or 5 for sure, or 4. But regardless, it's important to get our message across and get the membership engaged in some of the things that we're doing on your behalf. So again, more exciting times down the road, but Please pay attention to the websites. I think the website is going to be continually updated with more and more information as we progress as a nation. So thank you all for attending and listening tonight. So last one, good night. So I'll ask our elder William to say a prayer for us as we go home and pray for our loved ones and those ones that are in the hospitals, challenged and fighting for their lives right now. We do have a couple of young band members that are in the hospitals that are really having a serious go right now with their lives. So please offer prayers for some of our young families and young individuals that are currently, battling for their lives right now. Thank you.